I won't leave you. Whatever happens, we'll be together.
Forever.
A moment of silence, please.
Thank you for joining us. Matt grabs his microphone at the exact right moment. Hi, I'm Rachel.
And I'm Matt,
And this is Come In 81 Kilo.
a Forever Night podcast. This is, or this was?
It still is. It still is. So this is Forever Night Season 3, Episode 22, Last Night. Nat, right out the gate, I want to know thoughts, feelings, emotions. How are you right now?
Last night was wild. I stayed up like so late, and
This is not the time for jokes. This is a serious
this
moment.
is exactly the time for jokes.
It is not. Do
The
not cover up your
serious
pain with
moments
humor.
are the perfect occasion for humor to cover the wound.
It sounds like you are covering the wound. Let's peel it back. This is a vulnerable place. This is a safe place. You can talk about how you feel. I'm fucking messed up, so I just need some validation here right now.
Much like the end of Chapter House Dune,
Yeah.
I was not satisfied with how everything was wrapped up.
Okay. That's fair. That was a very contemporary opinion. Everyone thought this was the most fucking bullshit that had ever bullshitted on a television station ever. And we're very, very angry at it. And I think retrospectively, looking back 30 years past when this all happened, I can see that point of view, but also, I mean, we'll get to it at the end, but I feel like I have mixed feelings about how this ends, because how else do you wrap this up? How else?
Well, my main issue is we don't actually see proof that either of them died.
Yeah. No, we don't.
So it leaves it.
It's kind of like the Sopranos black screen.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. And you know what? There's Being Human, the UK version. And this is a big spoiler. I don't know. Skip forward like 2 minutes. At the very end, everybody gets everything that they want.
Right.
Yes.
But the devil can make you dream
Well,
whatever you want.
At the very end of the canonical television show, like the actual show, everybody gets what they want. All the supernatural beings get cured. And there is like a tiny snippet you can find online if you want to, where they realize that this is all part of the devil's illusion and they never actually got cured. But in the television show, if you just leave it where it is, it ends completely happy.
Yeah.
I hate it. I hate
Yeah.
it. Like, I fucking hate it. And I think, oh my God, what if we had had a television show where Nick gets it? Like, Nick gets to be human. Like, the Nick Natalie thing works just like the Janet and Bob thing worked. And he gets to be
We
like,
could have had, like, oh, fade to black because he and Natalie are going to the black fuck sheets.
yeah.
And then in the morning, like, the sun is coming through the skylight, and Nick's like, oh shit, I didn't close the skylight. I never closed the skylight. But the sun is shining on him and he doesn't burn.
Yeah.
And then boom, we would only need like 10
2
frames
seconds. Yeah.
of the sun shining on him and him not burning with like a surprised look on his face, and then black.
I don't know. I don't know how I would have felt about that. I think I would have had so many questions because, he's going to keep working in the Force. And Tracy, does Tracy still die? Is Tracy still dead? And he just killed a guy. He's going to lose his job. He's going to end up in the Life from Curiouser and Curiouser. Where
Maybe.
he's fucking his captain and he gets laid out. He gets suspended because he's using too much force, and he's going to forget he's not bulletproof, and he's going to get shot on the job, and he's going to die.
Is there a Nick and Reese fan fiction?
I'm not going to say no, because over a wide enough population, the possibility for everything is greater than 0. So probably. I mean, we watched, so Scaredy Cats, which I've mentioned before, is doing, he did a whole season watch along of season 1 in all of January. And he loves LaCroix, and I love his love for LaCroix because I also share a deep and abiding love for LaCroix. So if you look up Scaredy Cats, SKARDY, on YouTube, feel free to go follow him. He did a great job covering all of them, and he has one episode where he talks about LaCroix, and he's like, are these two men having gay sex? Are they how much gay sex? Is it good gay sex? Who's the top, and why is it LaCroix? And then he's like, being a vampire is a pansexual fuckfest. That's just science. I just love that. Anyway, that was our moment of levity before we get into the show, because there is no levity in this episode. It was ending, and they wanted it to feel like an end, and it feels like an end. And it ends the only way a 90s show can end, which is with suicide, contemplations of suicide, actual suicide. We get
Murder suicide.
Yeah. My God.
Murder assisted suicide.
Yeah. It's like suicide by cop.
Or is it assisted suicide by assisted suicide?
It's suicide by cop at like long distance. Like it just took a long time to
But
get
it was like
around there.
chained.
Yeah, it's fine. So anyway, we open on a tub, like a tub of water.
Yeah.
And there's a woman getting into the tub. And she's wearing her clothes. And this is the part where I knew this was going to be hard for Matt, because he was like, why does she have her clothes on? That's just crazy. Yeah, and we also flash to her leaving this notebook and addressing it to Natalie. And all of this is happening while LaCroix monologues.
But with this like wave filter.
Yeah, it's this weird kind of underwater almost.
Mhm.
And don't think I didn't notice that the skylight is in the background behind his head, because the skylight is the actual villain of the entire series. Not LaCroix.
It's the plot hole.
Yeah,
It's the hole that all the plot comes through.
literal plot hole in the
Straight
whole
into
series.
Nick's apartment.
Yeah, well, this woman in the tub ends up cutting her wrists with a scalpel, and then sinking down under the water, and then fade to intro. And the monologue that LaCroix is giving over all of this is one of my favorite. The LaCroix monologues in this episode are like, this is why I love these old television shows. They did not have budget. They did not have special effects. You were not coming to them for the costume design, special effects, adaptation, whatever was happening. This is not Foundation. They knew what they were, but what they did have were writers. And every once in a while, they had some really fucking good writers. And you get some really good dialogue moments and monologue moments in Forever Night and in a lot of 90s television shows. Like, that's one of my favorite things about Babylon 5 is how well written all of the dialogue is. And so his monologue is like, life is a gift, as sweet as a ripe peach, as precious as a gilded jewel. Side note, how does he know what a peach tastes like? He wouldn't have had a peach in Rome, would he have?
He was very well to travel. he was very well traveled as a Roman general. So he may have.
Yeah, but it's
had
native
a
to
peach-
northwest China.
He was very
He was so well
well-traveled.
traveled. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, probably not then.
No. But
Oh,
even
that's
Nick wouldn't have
probably why
known.
peaches feature so prominently in Journey to the West.
Possibly. Yes. But that's okay.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. I have never been able to understand the logic of willfully surrendering such a treasure. And what is there to gain? How dark can your existence be when compared to an eternal void? And this we've discussed before, but the concept of eternal void is literally the only way a conscious being can conceive of nothingness is like an endless black.
Right.
Because a conscious being cannot conceive of lack of consciousness. As
Right.
in, you would just end, like when you go to sleep and you don't know how much time has passed. That's effectively what, but even then, there's a partial awareness of time passing. Death, you would assume, if there is nothing after, would simply be like flicking off a light switch. It's not like you are in an endless black sea. You simply do not exist. But we can't conceive of that. That's actually a limitation in how our consciousness works.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not what Lacroix is referencing, but I just want to throw that out there. Eternal void, not really. More like just nothing. Blick. Unless, of course, you have faith that there is something beyond, which we kind of discuss later.
Or
and we will
firsthand
discuss.
experience.
I know, right? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. What do you see from where you stand? A bright light at the end of the tunnel? Is it a ray of hope, a glimmer of something better, or will it burn you like the rising sun? Is that sound you're hearing the trumpeting of St. Peter's angels or the scream of Mednock's tortured souls? Did he make all this up on the fly? Or has he been scripting this in his head for this moment for a real long time?
Well, that's why he's been podcasting. He's been practicing his ad hoc existential info dump.
Yeah.
Looking up Memnock.
But I love the last line. Don't trade a treasure for an empty box. That's a really powerful monologue, especially considering that the subject matter of this entire episode is the contemplation of suicide.
Right.
Which we've discussed before. This is sort of the underlying elephant in the room of the whole quest for mortality thing, which is if it is so hard to be a vampire and you can't stop being a vampire, why don't you just stop being? And we gloss over that question a lot. Well, he loves life. Okay, well, that's great. No, I'm totally behind that. That's fine. Sometimes it's because the vampire's survival instinct is too strong and so they can't kill themselves. And I don't mind that one either. But it is a question. If Nick is so tortured, how has he made it 800 years? And I think that's a question on Lacroix's mind too. And I think that's why we get the lines that we get from him at the very end of this episode, which we will talk about when we get there, because it has to have occurred to him that this was a possibility. That there might come a time when it was so hard for Nick to be what he was that he didn't want to be anymore. And I think that's why he does all the shit that he does to Nick. Because he's constantly pushing him. He's constantly making him angry instead of sad. And forcing him to question his ideas, to question who he is, to question how he moves through the world. Does he do a real bad job of it sometimes? Yeah, but all parents do. I mean,
does he
sometimes,
respond to at least 30% of Nick's emotional bids?
Yeah, he responds to all of them, just not positively.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, he's picking it up. He's just not putting it back down the way that Nick wants him to. And it's just the way that we pivoted the Nick Lacroix relationship in the last 3 episodes gives this one so much impact. I can't believe it was not planned. That they didn't want this final moment between Nick and Lacroix to hit. And it hits. But after we come back from the intro, we're at the scene. It's not really a crime scene. There's no crime in this episode. This woman needed help. She didn't get the help she needed. And here we are.
Oh, the crime was addressing the suicide notebook to Natalie.
I have feelings about that too. I do, because I get where this woman was going. Natalie had been a friend. She saw herself in Natalie, and she didn't want Natalie to do what she had done. So she was trying to present herself as a cautionary tale. But she didn't check in with Natalie first. We have had conversations with Natalie in the past where she has expressed suicidal thoughts.
Right.
And this woman was a psychiatrist. She didn't check in to see if Natalie was already having suicidal ideation before she gave her social permission to go ahead and do it. And then addressed this notebook to her, which everyone lets her keep this notebook. And I get that you can't, like, what are you going to do? Rip it from Natalie's hands? But also, like, you could, quote, check it into evidence. You could separate it from her for a little while to give her some breathing space. You all can see that she is obviously struggling. And we make cracks about the fact that nobody cares about Natalie all the time because it kind of feels like nobody does. But this feels like blatant neglect.
Yeah, reckless endangerment.
She wasn't offered counseling. She was allowed to keep this suicide note that was addressed to her. And I'm big mad at her friend for giving her this. Of course, her friend didn't know that her biffle, like her love interest was a vampire who had been ignoring her for 6 years. She couldn't know that, but they had been out of contact for years. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, she writes her this letter and she's like, this will help Natalie. Natalie will do what it takes to get a life now. Of course, she's not thinking rationally. She's not making rational decisions right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know, because I have complicated feelings about suicide, or like, I just have complicated feelings about all of this, because I can understand there are situations where life is too painful and there is no way out. And having gone through several family members who have gone through extended illnesses, knowing they were never going to get better, they were only going to get worse, and that at a certain point they were going to be unable to even cognitively understand the load that they would place on their loved ones, and there being no way out except through. And that is hard. And of course, there's lots of people that would still choose to do that because, yeah, did we have great times with my dad after he had dementia? Heck yeah. One time he sat in a laundry basket and it was the funniest thing. And we all laughed and he laughed and it was really funny and it was really sweet. And those were great memories and I wouldn't have had them. But I can understand where there would be a situation where suicide is maybe not the answer, but should be offered as an option. And yet we get things like this where this woman clearly needed help. She needed someone to talk to. And if in the end she felt that there was no other way out, okay, but then don't drag Natalie into it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and we kind of went back and forth on the Discord about this a little bit, because does this make Laura a bad friend? I don't think it makes her a bad friend. I think it makes her a bad psychiatrist. I think it makes her I don't check in with maybe a neglectful friend. Like
a bad communicator.
Yeah, it's just, you know what? She didn't make sure this was the moment. She didn't check in. She just was like, I know what's right and I'm going to do it. And okay, I'm just going to leave that there. There's no solution for that. It just is what it is. But we find Nick and he's comforting Natalie and she's holding the notebook because, of course, it was addressed to her. And he goes over and talks to Tracy, and Tracy's like, she was a psychiatrist. I'm guessing no one saw this coming. And Nick goes, yeah, not even her closest friends, which, okay, if Natalie was her closest friend and she hadn't talked to her in years, this woman was way more isolated than Natalie.
Right, because at least Natalie has peers that she communicates with.
Yeah.
And if this lady was practicing as a psychiatrist, like in a private practice, that she may not have had peers. She may have only had patients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Nick kind of looks meaningfully at Nat, implying that she's the, quote, closest friend. And then he goes, guess you really never know your friends, do you? And Tracy goes, no, I guess not. Tracy just lost Vashon. She doesn't know she killed him, but she knows he's gone. He moved on. She just basically got ghosted by her boyfriend. Literally, he's like a ghost now.
Yeah.
But she got ghosted by her boyfriend. And like, oh my God. And then all of a sudden, this is happening. She's got to be in not a great place either. And we get like a tiny little glimpse of that in just a second. One with this, no, I guess not, which is this really sad line and also foreshadowing because she doesn't know a shit about Nick. She thinks she knows a lot about Nick, but guess what? Not really.
He's got a secret.
Yeah. And Nick goes, can you finish up here? And Tracy's like, yeah, that's fine. That's okay. I can do that. And so Nick takes Natalie out of the scene because she's struggling and he sees that. And he's the most emotionally intelligent person in this entire episode. So it tracks. And then Tracy whispers,
Who is?
Nick.
Nick. Yeah.
Yeah. Nick, maybe LaCroix. LaCroix is like, just assume LaCroix takes like, S position, like top. And then we compete for the one below that. And Tracy just goes, sure. Like, what else was I going to say? No, don't go. Leave Natalie here. Because she's sad that her boyfriend just left and there's Nick over there being lovey-dovey with Nat and like kissing her on the forehead. And it's gotta hurt that she had this guy and they were together. And then he left. And here's Nick with this woman who obviously loves him that he is doing nothing about.
Right.
And Tracy's not dumb. She sees them. She sees them not being together. And that has to hurt too. And then we cut to Nick and Natalie in the morgue. And Natalie is reading a part of the note that was left to her. And it's like, do as I ask, not as I've done. Don't let yourself become empty. And Natalie goes, I've never lost a friend like that. I've never had a suicide note addressed to me. Guess this is a night of firsts.
Do as I ask, not as I've done. Don't let yourself become empty. It's the first time I've lost someone to suicide. It's the first time I've had a suicide note addressed to me, a night of firsts.
First and last. Ugh. Night of firsts.
Yeah.
And then it's actually her last night. Ugh. And Natalie goes, she knew I was a kindred spirit. That's why she sent this to me. I mean, how did she know that? You guys weren't in communication.
Right. And I can see where Laura had this connection with Natalie years ago, like when they were in school.
Yeah.
I guess. And maybe that's like the last close relationship that she had.
I mean, Natalie used to have people in the morgue that would come in like Grace. And over time, we filtered them out. So, yeah, she is kind of alone right now. But...
yeah, but I don't know that Laura would have known that.
yeah, that's what... how... if they're out of touch, how did she know that Natalie needed this?
Right, and maybe she's just writing a
Hashtag
letter.
Didn't need this.
Maybe she's just writing a letter to the version of Natalie that she knew back when they were friends. And
yeah, I think that's probably a good summary of it is that she remembers the version of Natalie that she was friends with. And she thinks that that version of Natalie will respond positively to this.
yeah.
And she's just not in a place where she's checking in to make sure that her mental model of Natalie is still accurate. But Nick actually, he clocks into the fact that she is putting out some emotional bids almost immediately. And he's like, reap, reap, reap. Like damage control mode. Because he's like, Natalie, she took her own life because she had really big problems. And Natalie's like, okay. I used to think that suicide was a sacrilege, but now I don't know.
She's seen some shit.
Yeah. And Nick goes, do not talk like that, Natalie. I don't want to hear that. And Natalie's like, oh, okay, well, you've thought about yourself. I mean, what do you think the quest for mortality is? Not everyone commits suicide quickly.
Right.
And what is a quest for mortality but asking for the ability to die? Because right now, he can only die violently.
Right.
And he doesn't want to die violently, but he does want to die. That's what the quest for mortality is. But what we put in here is a flashback to Last Act, which Last Act is the season 1, episode 4 episode where his former lover has taken her own life because she felt like she was no longer contributing to society. And he goes on a bit of a tailspin. And this is the section when he comes back to his apartment and he's acting very cavalier with his own personal safety. And Natalie has to like push him out of the sunlight. And he's just being he's really acting like it doesn't matter. Like he wouldn't care what happened to him. And Natalie confronts him about it. And he says, I lost an old friend the other day. And this is when Natalie says, well, how long did you know them? And he was like, oh, I don't know, 300 years, something like that. And she's like, oh, old friend with you takes on a whole new meaning. And this is the section where he has like the doll. And that whole episode was him confronting the idea of, should I take my own life? Is that a form of mortality that I feel comfortable with? And ultimately he decides no. And he moves on, so to speak, to a more like a slower form. I don't know what to tell. He doesn't decide to walk out into the sun that day. That's what he decides.
Right.
And then we come back to what's actually happening in the episode. And Nick is like, maybe you shouldn't work on this case, Natalie.
Which fair. She shouldn't.
No shit.
Her boss shouldn't let her work on this case. But as far as we know, Natalie does not have a boss.
I don't know if she's the head coroner. If she is, she may not. But she would have like the city commissioners or something who could say, no, you got to be off this. You're too close. But Natalie says, no, like I owe her this. I can handle it. I can handle doing this to it. I can handle doing this to a friend. But what I can't handle is that I understand her. And that scares me to death.
Maybe you shouldn't do the work on this case.
Laura never reached out to me in life for help. I owe her this much. To see that everything is properly done now that she's gone. I can handle it. But you know what I can't handle? I think that I understand her, and that scares me to death.
Because she gets it. It doesn't feel mystifying. She understands it. And that is a powerful line. It's like, it's not her saying, I've thought about doing this. It's, oh, wow, I see where she's coming from. And I don't know how that fits into how I feel about myself and how I feel about my life. And then we cut to Reese and Tracy at the precinct. And Reese is like, well, how's Natalie? Talking to Tracy. And Tracy's like, not well. The whole suicide note addressed to her was kind of a dick move. So Tracy's on our side.
Yeah.
And she tells Reese, listen, there was no sign of foul play. No one disagrees with what happened here. So can I just wrap this up early and go home? I don't feel great. And then a screaming guy comes out from the back, and we find out that this is a transfer that they're holding for pickup. And he's like, I don't want to go back. And he's just shouting really loudly. And Reese kind of gets in his face and he goes, you know what? You settle down or I'm going to have you cuffed. This dude should be cuffed.
Why is this guy not
Why
already
is this
cuffed?
man not already? This guy is clearly showing like violent, chaotic tendencies. He should be
Right.
cuffed.
He's already resistant.
Yeah.
So you need to restrain him.
Yeah. What are you going to restrain him with? A harsh look? This man needs, like, he needs to not be able to use his hands.
Reese wrote him a strongly written letter
Yeah.
and expected it to work.
Yeah. Expect my complaint in the mail if you don't quit doing what you're doing. It's, I get it. I get why we don't do it because it leads to where it ultimately leads to, but also like, ugh. Would it have killed them to cuff him so that they didn't have to keep pushing him around and slamming him into walls and shit? We go back to Nick and Natalie at the morgue, and Nick is holding this journal. And he goes, you know, it's amazing how something so personal can become just a piece of evidence. And Natalie goes, it's not just evidence to me. I think Nick was like, huh, wow, look at this thing. It's just evidence now. Ha ha, we don't need to keep reading it and talking about it, Natalie. And Natalie's like, oh, no.
Oh, you think Nick was making an attempt to
I think he was attempting
disconnect?
to distance her from it, to create like a verbal distance. Like, you know, she's gone and this is her journal. And yes, it was addressed to you, but in the end of the day, it's just evidence. Like it doesn't have to be the Bible by which you live your life, and it doesn't have to determine your decisions. And we don't have to belabor this anymore because
Right. Just like not everything you read on the internet is true. Not even, I guess, most of the thoughts that pop into your head, not necessarily true.
yeah,
The things you read from an emotional former friend, not necessarily true, even if they are emotionally significant. So Natalie, I guess, needs to maintain some emotional distance, some not necessarily skepticism, but read into it with the context of this was an emotionally troubled person
yeah.
that wrote this.
And I think Natalie's troubled right now. She's in a vulnerable place, and this is speaking to her in a way that Nick does not feel comfortable with. And so he's trying to objectify it for her.
Yeah.
He's trying to, this is just a journal, Natalie.
Just like all the other cases that you've handled, this is just another personal effect for the person whose case you are handling.
Yeah. And now it is just evidence, just like all other personal effects end up as evidence. And she's like, not this time. I'm not willing to let it go. It's basically, I'm not willing to let this go yet.
Yeah.
And she says, years ago, we used to get together and we would talk for hours, but only about our careers. Our personal lives were non-existent. And once we realized that, we lost touch. This is when you start a podcast, can confirm when you find you are only talking about work or the kids and you don't interact otherwise. Highly recommend just go ahead and start a podcast.
Get a shared hobby.
Yeah.
with an acquaintance, a close friend, a stranger with a shared interest. Or
Yeah.
a spouse.
Or a Patreon member. I just, if you're a good friend and you find that you're only talking about one thing, then do you just go, well, this relationship isn't working? Or do you take the time to go, hey, Natalie, we're going to hang out today. We're going to go see a movie. And then we can talk, but we cannot talk about work.
Right.
And maybe we work together and we support each other to try to find more friends and maybe branch out and maybe we create a life for ourselves.
You can do a shared activity that you then relate with each other about, or you can say, okay, instead of spending time together today, let's each spend time apart doing something we're each individually interested in. And then we get together tomorrow.
Yeah.
And
we talk
geek out about it.
Yeah. Let's join a cooking class. Let's go to the library and sign up for a book club. Let's figure this out instead of just being like, well, you're a bummer. I don't want to be with another downer. I don't want to be with another Debbie
Bye,
Downer.
Felicia.
Bye, Felicia. I have a feeling that the problems with Laura started long before, and that
Yeah.
Natalie just didn't have a way of seeing it. And then by the time it would have become obvious to her so that she would have seen it, they were no longer in touch. And then when it comes back and she finds this journal and she gets this letter, it feels extremely sudden. And I doubt it was very sudden. It was just that this was her ghosting Natalie because Natalie reminded her too much of herself was probably the beginning of a spiral that ended in where we are now.
Yeah.
And the only reason it feels sudden to Natalie is because she had lost contact for so long. And Natalie says, her leaving me this note and her journal was so that I would learn from her mistakes. It's my wake-up call. It's time to get a life. And Nick goes, you have a life. You have got one.
You've got one. And it's not empty.
Not now. 6 years ago, April 14th.
What's that?
Day they brought you in.
And I think what Natalie is saying is, I need a lot. I need a life. I need something that isn't work. I need a hobby. I need friends. I need someone who loves me as much as I love them. And what Nick is hearing is, you are not enough. You don't count because you aren't giving me what I want.
Right. He's not really in a reciprocal relationship with Natalie.
Yeah. It's a very...
He wants to be, but he's deliberately stopping it from developing.
Where it almost feels accusatory on Natalie's part, where she's like, no, I don't have a life. And it's like, Nick is there. Nick is giving all Nick can give. The fact that Nick has continued his relationship with her as long as he has, even though it's a platonic relationship, is as close to intimacy as he is comfortable giving her. And instead of recognizing that he's never going to be able to give more than that, and then, well, I guess a couple times she tried to move on, but it ends up like, he isn't giving me what I want, and so I'm going to discount him completely. Like, there has to be some sexual tension here, or it doesn't count.
She's expecting him to fulfill her emotional needs, even though he has communicated, I can't do that for you.
Yeah, clearly, repeatedly.
And she hasn't looked anywhere else.
Yeah. To be fair, the last couple times she looked, they were like serial killers and shit.
Yeah, and so...
She does have a type.
At a certain point, you can make the claim that you don't have the chance. Like, you don't have the opportunity. You don't have the capacity anymore to do the thing. And it's not anybody's fault. It's just circumstance.
Well, why is the only quote life she's supposed to get romantic life? That's the only thing we focus on. Oh, Natalie doesn't have a boyfriend. Natalie doesn't have a boyfriend. I mean, okay, lots of people move through life without a significant other, and they have what one would consider a life.
On the other hand, most people need at least a couple, like, close personal friends to fulfill your emotional needs.
And right, but that doesn't have to be a romantic relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
But Natalie doesn't have any other close friends.
There is a spectrum of intimacy. There is emotional intimacy sans physical intimacy. There is physical intimacy without emotional intimacy.
I bet she could have made some friends at what was the conference she went to?
Oh, the
where she got all
conference?
dressed up?
Yeah. And she's like, oh, it's a bunch of coroners in a room. I don't know. It wasn't that great. It doesn't have to be about work. It doesn't have to be a coroner's conference.
But what is her hobby? Her special interest is vampires.
But it's not like it's going to get airdropped to her house or something. You go out and you find the thing. You start the podcast. You make the friends. You do the shit. She
should have become a guest on LaCroix's podcast.
Exactly. Yeah.
And she could have built a community around that.
Yeah. I mean, the one time she went to the bar and tried to meet people, the guy took her home and almost raped her. So that didn't work out either.
Yeah, and then
To
the
be
guy
fair,
she ran
Natalie,
into.
if we unpack this for too long, we're going to get a lot of Natalie trauma on the plate. Okay. So we can't keep going for too long. I mean, Natalie has a lot of reasons why she doesn't branch out. And when Nick is like, you have one, she's like, I mean, yeah, kinda. And then she goes, 6 years ago on April 14th. So y'all, April 14th is Forever Night
Next
Day. April 14th, 6 years ago, which means it's really interesting that they used the date. Like they included the intervening years that the show was off the air. Because it was
Well,
2
it was-
years. It was like 2 years prior when we watched Only the Lonely, and that was in 1992.
Yes.
And this is 1996. So they actually count the all 6 years.
Right.
As if the time in between seasons was like shit was happening. We just weren't getting video of it. But Nick doesn't know. He didn't know their anniversary. He's like, well, what? What happened 6 years ago? I mean, time is meaningless to him. So
Yeah, for 6 years for him is like is like her saying, "Yeah, remember 5.25 months ago when this thing happened?"
yeah.
No, I
Yeah.
don't remember.
I just read The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle. And there's a section where he's describing how time feels to the unicorn because the unicorn is immortal. And he ends up describing it as like there's no sense of passage. So everything feels like one long day. And so she literally cannot remember how long it has been since she's had contact with another unicorn because it doesn't feel like any time has passed since she had a contact with the last unicorn that she talked to. But she knows time has passed because she understands time as a concept, but she can't feel the passage of time.
Yeah.
And so she has no metric for understanding except in the abstract. And it has to kind of feel like that. Like 6 years ago, I don't know, was that like Wednesday? Oh,
I have some experience with this.
you're like, oh, so he's like, they're all ADHD. I got it. Okay, good.
Time blindness is a thing. There's
And-
right now, there's like recently, which can cover up for like a couple weeks. And then there's before that, which is all one long blur.
Or last yesterday.
I was thinking I was thinking about anchors,
Okay.
like time anchors.
Okay. Like tent
And
poles.
so one of the ways that I keep track of like what time range did something happen in, like when I remember something, I can remember context of what was going on around then. So when I'm remembering something, I can remember some context of what else was happening in my life at the time. I can't necessarily put things in order very well, but I can remember like when this happened, where was I living? And having moved a lot in my life, it gives me these nice like 1 to 4 year chunks
Yeah.
that when I remember something, oh, I know I was living here at the time, and I've memorized I've memorized the dates for when I moved to different places because I've applied for some things
Yeah.
and like security clearance, whatever.
Yeah, you got to put your,
you have
your
to,
last
like,
10 years of address.
I have a
and some shit.
spreadsheet of every time I've moved and the relevant addresses for the moves, and I've had to like reference this spreadsheet often enough that I can remember like, oh, I lived in this place between this year and this year. And I was thinking a couple weeks ago that it's actually really useful for me to move every few years because then it puts bounds on,
Yeah.
okay, I'm having a memory when that happened. I was living here, so I know it happened between like 2016 and 2020.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it was like for the unicorn. a little bit.
Yeah, except she lives in the same forest. For
Exactly.
like forever. Yeah, she never
So
leaves.
it's just,
And it's also probably like Nick. Nick, it's like 30-year chunks. Like
yes.
if I'm in a place for, oh, that was when I was in Singapore the first time. Okay, well, that's, whatever. So we get the whole Only the Lonely flashback because Natalie's like, oh, that was the day they brought you in. And we get him coming in the body bag. They actually clip all the flashback clips together. And we get the whole thing. We get him coming in. We get his cheek healing. We don't get the blood going back into the body bag.
Right.
And we get him drinking from his Capri Sun juice pouch while making really uncomfortable eye contact the whole time. What are you? Something very different from you. The whole thing. And then we come back and Natalie's like, my life changed that day and I don't want to end up like Laura, Nick. And Nick says, I won't let you.
That's not your call.
This is a
man.
fallacy. You can be there for your friends. You can support your friends. You can go out of your way for your friends, and you should. But you ultimately have no control over other people's emotional states.
Right. This is,
I can provide you with the opportunity to be happy, but I cannot make you happy.
I would say that's maybe not gaslighting. Anytime you are telling somebody what emotion they are feeling or what their motivation was, like you are making statements about their internal state. That's like the worst way to have any kind of conversation. They either have to squash their own feelings and agree with you,
Yeah, they have to make
Which
a liar
is
out of
bullshitting
themselves or
themselves.
make a liar out of you.
or they have to call you a liar.
Yeah.
And so that's not a way to have a good conversation. That's not a way to really have a conversation. You just end up in an argument.
You end up not being able to be truthful with each other.
Right.
And when Nick is like, I won't let you, she fires back.
Yeah, he's kind of gaslighting her.
Well, no, she fires back with, okay. Then it's real simple. You just have to love me as much as I love you.
I don't want to end up like Laura, Nick.
I won't let you.
Well, then it's simple. You just have to love me as much as I love you.
Which is a banger.
Wow. Natalie. Hot damn. She said the quiet part out loud, y'all. After,
You know what's going on in my head? All right.
okay, fine. Oh no, you're gonna save me from myself? Cool. Here's the roadmap right here. You just gotta actually love me. And Nick looks fucking terrified.
As he should.
That face is like, oh shit. Oh shit. But luckily, saved by the bell. Ring, ring. Telephone. And so he picks up his phone. Natalie looks pissed. Like she can't believe he just answered his phone, but he is on call. He is on call.
Right, but she just gained control of the conversation.
Yeah,
And then his phone rings.
right. And we actually fade to black, and here we go to a commercial break. And when we come back, we get another weird LaCroix filming thing where he's monologuing again. And this is the one where he's like, love. It warps our senses, twists our souls, can take us past hope, past cure, past help. He's got a lot to say about love. Heaven makes means to kill our joy with love, and yet we must have it at any cost.
I know about love. It's suffering. It's anguish. It's pain. Heaven makes means to kill our joy with love. And yet we must have it at any cost. But are you so enamored that you will overlook your love of life? And you do love it. I've seen you smell the sea. Gaze at the stars at night. Are you willing to sacrifice one mistress for another? Look into your heart and tell me that you're willing to make the choice.
And this is really good because what he's saying is, you have to choose between your life or your love. Your love of your life or this kind of love? Which one will you choose? Because you have to sacrifice one mistress for another. Because as a vampire, you don't get to have your cake and eat it too, because you only want to eat the fucking cake. You don't just want to have it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
if you decide to love her, you will kill her. You will harm her. And then you will never feel the same way about your life as you did before. I know. I fucking know, because stars are the only comforting light, motherfucker. I lost Fleur because I chose to leave her. My love was strong enough to leave her behind, which I think we actually get a flashback.
Yes, we
With
get a
Fleur.
flashback with Fleur.
Yeah. And Nick tells Natalie, you know, I can't do that. I cannot love you. You do not understand. Natalie has never fully understood what Nick was talking about when he tried to explain what it's like to be a vampire. She either is willfully not willing to understand him, but also her insistence that this is a physical condition and not a metaphysical condition means she is looking at it like a set of needs.
Yeah.
Like, you have a disease, it requires a specific kind of medication, but it doesn't change who you are fundamentally. Get over it. Except it is obviously not just a physical condition. Motherfucker can fly, y'all. If I got a cold and suddenly I could levitate, I would be so happy. That's not how that works. And yet she insists that this is a physical condition, physical only, and that is how she's going to cure it. And when she literally blocks everything out in her mind so that she has never fully understood what he goes through to be with her. Even when she had him turn her brother into a vampire and he immediately started doing the kinds of things that he would never have done when he was alive. She was like, wow, I didn't know he had that in him. He didn't until Nick put it in there. Do you not get that, Natalie? And yet she just never has. And so this is another moment where she fundamentally misunderstands. He's trying to tell her, I do love you. That's why I'm not with you.
I love you enough to keep you safe from me.
Yeah. And I think what she's thinking is, well, Jeanette, look what Janet did with Bob. And it's like, yeah, but that was a risk. That was risky. And,
Right, and-
Jeanette is not Nick.
Right. And we know that Jeanette is a risk taker.
Yeah. And she is a different vampire from Nick.
Right.
So
And women have differences from men.
I wasn't going to say anything about it.
Oh,
But
okay.
yeah.
I mean, like personality wise,
Yeah.
somebody who is temperamentally masculine and someone who is temperamentally feminine, which Nick and Jeanette are kind of archetypal
Yeah.
masculine and feminine
Yeah.
temperamentally. They are very different personalities.
Yeah.
So there are things that Jeanette, as a very temperamentally feminine person, there's things that she can do that Nick cannot do.
Right.
They're not available to him.
She's also spent a lot more time learning to control herself when she's drinking human blood.
There are some statements in the show that, like, when Nick goes to
okay,
her
okay.
to talk about turning somebody, and
think of
she's
it,
like,
think of it this
I've
way.
never been able to hold back.
All right, think of it this way, okay? You eat a lot of chocolate. You eat chocolate every single day. If you get special chocolate and you have 10 pieces and they tell you can only eat 5, it's going to be really easy for you to only eat 5 because you get chocolate every day. If you only eat carrots, you eat nothing but carrots, and somebody gives you 10 pieces of special chocolate and says you only can eat 5 pieces of chocolate, and you haven't eaten chocolate in so long, you forgot how fucking good chocolate tasted, you're going to eat all 10 pieces of chocolate.
He didn't have any problem turning Natalie's brother, even though he had not been drinking human blood.
Look, listen.
He had not killed anybody with his teeth for 100 years.
I know. And I'm sorry to tell you this, but Forever Night can't keep its shit together, okay, honey? It just can't. And that doesn't reduce my enjoyment of it in the slightest. However, the fact that Nick is successful all the time except every other Tuesday is...
He chokes with the ones he loves.
He does. Yeah. He didn't know Richard. I think the guy's
Right.
name was Richard. He didn't know Richard. It
like
was no...
every other person that he had Okay. Every other person that he has successfully turned, like he just met him on Thursday or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. He didn't have any involvement. It was fine.
The two people that he did try to turn that he was actually in love with.
That's because the hungers get conflated. Okay.
Right.
That's because the hungers
And
amplify
brought
each
up,
other.
I brought up this topic the other day. It was called
Dimorphous expressions.
Yes.
I'll eat you up. I love you so.
Yes. And it's a psychological phenomenon
It's
where
like cute aggression.
yes. Yeah, cute aggression is like the most common dimorphous expression. And it's where like your internal representation of something is expressed with the opposite seeming emotion.
Yeah.
And so you see a cute baby and you express it as, I want to eat this thing.
Or I want to
Because
squeeze it
it's-
so hard.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's so cute.
Right.
You see a fluffy kitten. I want to hug you and squeeze you.
Yeah. And name you George.
And so Meg said, that is very apt for a show about vampires
Yeah.
where the hungers get conflated.
They get all mixed up. Yeah, one hunger feels much like the other. A hunger for a person feels like hunger for their blood. It all kind of runs together. So it's
And-
almost better if he doesn't know the person.
Okay, so there's 3 types of love,
Okay.
right?
No, I'm here. I am.
There's platonic love.
Yes.
I forget what the technical name or the like Greek names are. I know it's Eros and agape.
And then one other one.
But Eros is the root of erotic,
Yeah.
but Eros is a like consumptive love, consumption love, and
It's
it's
consuming love.
related to like I'm consuming this tasty food.
Yeah.
I'm consuming like I'm having
am-
that person.
Eating them. Yes. Feasting, one might say.
and so that is an actual way that the like consumptive pleasure of being with another person and the consumptive pleasure of like consuming sustenance
Yeah.
are
Linked.
they're linked. They're internally like the internal representation is overlapped.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of people, they're linked too. They just don't actually, like, for a vampire, that's dangerous.
Right.
Because your food is the person you love. And yeah, so Nick is like, I literally can't. Like, we've
And
gone
so,
over
well,
this. I can't.
I guess the difference. So the difference between humans and vampires on this topic is, for humans, those two pleasures are overlapped for like the internal representation, but not as the external action.
Right.
But for a vampire, they carry over the internal representational overlap.
But now they are also
But
expressed.
now they are
Yeah.
the external activity is the same thing.
Right. And after he's like, I can't. My Eros is too strong. Natalie is like,
My erotic love for you.
Natalie goes, I have been wrong about a lot of things, but I don't think I'm wrong about this. I need a resolution, Nick. I need an end. I need
A climax?
I need a clarification. I need to know. A climax, thank you. Yes. No, he should have just brought her some really good toys. This is what he should have done. But he's like, she goes, I need an end. I need to know. I need to.
This is why we need
What
more
is
sex positive
this?
communication.
What is this between us?
Because Nick could have been like, I'll buy you toys and watch.
Ooh. See, now that's not a 90s show.
That's
Okay.
not a 90s
It's not
show.
that did things. I need a minute.
But that could work in the reboot. It's like in the Dresden Files.
Oh God, the reboot's it's gonna have to be on HBO. No, that's not a thing anymore. Used to be if you wanted to have sex, it had to be on HBO.
So in like the Dresden Files, there's these two characters.
Yeah.
One of them is like an energy vampire, but it's like life energy.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like being a succubus, incubus, whatever. The way that you get
Yeah,
somebody's
sexual
life
energy.
energy is by performing sexual activity with them, and
Yeah.
you suck the life out of them. But there's these two characters. One of them is one of these energy vampires, and then there's this lady that he likes to feed off of.
He falls in love
And
with.
they end up falling in love with each other.
Yeah.
And they've been together. They keep going on these benders where, because it's pleasurable for the other person, for the person that's getting the energy removed. It feels good both ways.
It's mutual. Yeah.
So they're in love with each other. They want to be together, but
Love is
they
toxic.
can't be close to each other and not indulge.
Well, and love is toxic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
Like it burns him.
oh yes.
Yeah.
Right. Because once they're both in love with each other, he can't touch her because it would hurt him.
Yeah.
So she ends up getting a full body latex suit and saying, okay, now we're going to have some fun. And now, like, she figured out a way to protect herself
And they
while
can still
still
be together.
being able to, like,
Yeah.
have a physically intimate relationship without the danger.
Right.
They just have to, like, prepare properly.
Right. Well, I don't think this is about preparation. I think this is about Nick has, like, he personally has hurt people he's loved, or he's seen the people he's loved be hurt repeatedly over and over again for
By him.
800 years. Sometimes by him, sometimes by other people. And he's literally done. Like, this isn't a moment where he wants a full body latex suit. This is a moment where it was like, I gave you the with affection card. I already told you how this works.
Ooh, they make those cut-proof
Can
gloves.
you, for the love
She
of
could
fuck,
get a
let me-
bodysuit made out of that,
No.
and he could not bite through it.
This isn't what he's saying is, I can't and I don't wanna.
Right, he doesn't even want to try.
No, I don't wanna. I don't wanna work this out.
She just needs a chainmail neck.
I don't want you
Headpiece.
any closer. I don't want it, is what he's saying. And those are the thoughts that are going through Natalie's mind, is like, what if I've just got a lot of garlic? Yeah. And he literally says, I can't, God damn it. Like, I fucking can't, Natalie.
Right, he's learned his lesson from indulging as many times as he has.
He's like, stop, please stop. I have already told you where my boundaries are and you can't stop pushing it. And you kind of understand where Natalie is coming from too, which is he gives some pretty mixed signals sometimes. And so she's like, I just need to know what is happening here. I need to know where we stand. And I think he cares about her enough that he doesn't want to harm her by just outright rejecting her or leaving her. Although he did try, although we kind of talk about that because we get that Black Buddha flashback. But there's a lot happening in this conversation. There's a lot of, we've never been clear with each other. And look where it has now gotten us. and we both want to be together. Like Nick wants to be with her and feel like they have this emotional intimacy without actually providing any emotional intimacy for Natalie. And yeah. And then finally, Natalie is like, look, there's a way that we can be together. And I have faith in you and in whatever follows. I think we can do this. I think we can make this work. I think we've got something going on. I think you love me more than you know. And then we get the flashback to Alyssa and the wedding night where he, whoopsies, kind of kills his wife a little bit.
Just a little bit.
And that's from Dead of Night. And then we come back and Nick is like, you are asking too much of me. If I kill you, you're dead. But I now have to carry your death for eternity. You are asking too much, which I have to imagine that is one of the reasons why Lacroix cautions him against getting too close to mortals, because eventually they are going to ask you for something you don't want to provide. And here we are. And then we go back to the precinct in this whole weird slow motion moment where Dawkins, who's the transfer guy, breaks free to some reverb and everyone draws a gun on him, even though he has a hostage, and he threatens the hostage and he pulls her into the back and he kicks the evidence guy out of the evidence locker. And we end up in the locker room, but he loses the hostage and then he pulls all the power and he breaks the breakers and cuts power to the station. So shit is going down at the precinct while Nick and Natalie are having a super intense conversation in the morgue. And Nick is like, whether I bring you across or not, this is a death sentence, Natalie. I may look alive, I may walk around, I may appear human, but I am not human. And you actually cannot conceive of what it's like to be a vampire until you are a vampire. But you won't be you anymore. Either I kill you and you die, or I turn you into a vampire and you are now no longer Natalie. Those are the two options. And Natalie's like, a life like Laura's is a death sentence, and I'm not afraid to try. Join a cooking class, Natalie. Go do some correspondence courses at the local community
Diversify
college.
your portfolio.
Her
of
first
life experiences.
Her first go-to is, well, I guess I need to get fucked by my vampire boyfriend.
Yeah, one piece of advice I've heard is have multiple things that you're mildly competent in. So that way, if you have a failure in one, it's not, I literally failed at everything I do, the one thing.
Yeah.
Because you've spread it out. You have multiple things that you can do, that you do, that you can maybe enjoy a little bit. And then, if you lose your job, it's not your life.
Yeah.
If you crash your car and that's your thing.
Yeah. It's not
the end of
everything
that you do. And with Natalie, it feels like she has her job and Nick. And that's literally her entire life.
One of the complaints about this episode, contemporary criticism of this episode, was that it felt like a betrayal of the characters. And the only character I really believe about that is Natalie. I don't really believe that Natalie in one night gets this note from her friend and is like, well.
Right, because they've had this interaction, this conversation a bunch of times.
I do think it picks off the scab. I do think this is like a, Nick, I love you more than you love me. And I need to know where this is going. I need to know.
The believable part is it does provoke her to confront Nick about it.
Yeah, not having an honest conversation about who we are and what our relationship is with each other is actively harming me.
Right. But she's always been grounded enough
out.
to be able to step back and have some perspective and say, oh, yeah, I recognize that what I'm asking Nick to do is dangerous for both of us and would harm Nick if, like, he hurt me.
I think, from my perspective, I think Natalie's been doing a lot of, it's fine, I'm fine. How are you? I'm fine, it's fine.
Right.
Oh, you don't want to change me right now? It's fine, I'm fine.
She's deluding herself.
Is she fine? No, she's not fucking fine. I'm fine, it's fine. It's fine. Oh, okay, we can't be together tonight? Okay, cool.
If you don't pay attention to the hurt in your life, is it really real?
Yeah.
If you just keep deliberately paying attention to the other things and letting that wound fester, is the wound even really there?
Yes. It is.
It is, yeah.
And you go see a psychiatrist, but definitely not Laura.
Or some type of therapist
Yeah. I
or
mean,
counselor. Not every psychiatrist is a therapist.
Or
We don't know.
or you journal that shit out. I don't know. I don't know that I would ever benefit from talk therapy. I know that about myself. I'd be sitting there like, it's fine. I'm fine. But you're here for a reason. Yeah, but it's fine. We can talk about you. I don't really want to talk about me. That feels selfish. Like, it would be hard for me to do talk therapy, but I love a good journal. Like, I'll journal shit out of stuff. But however you need to work it out, that's what she's doing right now. She's like, listen, we got some dirty laundry. It's about time. We got to hang it out. And here we go.
Gotta scoop the cat litter.
And I think that this is a wake-up call, which is exactly what she says. And this is what she's using it for. But I don't think where we ultimately lead feels consistent with the character.
Right.
I don't think where this ends feels like, it ends up feeling like that's where we were going all along, which I totally believe. But some of the steps feel a little bit forced. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think this is what Natalie would actually do as far as just ditching everything. Like, I have my bags packed. I'm going to Nick's because I'm never going home again.
Yeah.
I'm never going back to this job again.
Well, she did that in a more permanent hell. In a more permanent hell, as soon as she realized she was going to die, she started smoking and she went out and tried to bang another vampire and get him to bring her across.
Well, that's because the world was literally going to end.
Yeah, it was imminent. Anyway, this is when Nick actually gets the call. This is when he actually gets the call. And it's about the situation at the precinct. And Natalie looks super disappointed, but she's like, it's cool. It's fine. I'm fine. We could talk later. She's not fine. A woman who says it's fine, I'm fine, is not actually fine. Sometimes.
Can concur.
Sometimes it's fine. I'm fine. It's the repetition. It's fine. I'm fine.
Sometimes, from my experience, the I'm fine, it's fine is I'm trying to get you to stop asking me about it because the thing that I'm getting upset about is that you keep asking me about it.
Yeah, that
I
happens
was
sometimes.
fine, but then I keep getting asked, are you okay?
Fine is just I'm fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine. It's a throwaway of it, and it covers up a lot of, I don't really want to communicate because if I say too many words, I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth. So it's fine is where I'm going to leave it right now. And so Natalie's like, it's fine. And Nick actually leaves because he's working and he flies off and he arrives.
And he's a brick. So he takes it literally.
I mean, he knows, but also he's still kind of at work and they're having a non-productive conversation right now.
Because he understands that she's temporarily terminating the conversation.
Yeah.
By saying there's nothing else for me to say to you right now. And I'm kind of letting you go deal with what just came up.
Right.
And I will be okay in the meantime while you are busy taking care of your responsibilities.
It feels like that moment in a conversation where you have a natural break because you both need a minute to think about what happens next. Because he keeps saying, I can't do that for you. I'm not that for you. I don't want to be that for you. I can't be that for you. And she's saying, it's cool. I have faith. It's cool. I have faith. It's cool. I have faith, which is like, I'm trying to tell you no. I'm trying to be clear. And you're like, but baby, come on. Don't you think we could make this work? Baby, come on. And so he's like, this is non-productive. I'm leaving. So he goes off. He arrives at the precinct and he actually runs in, and Reese tells him it's Dawkins. You know, they were holding him for a transfer, and Nick's like, oh yeah, Dawkins? I know him. I arrested him. And Nick goes into the back room, into the locker room, and he ends up, even though they're waiting for a negotiator, he just goes in there and
Neither
nobody
of them
stops him.
should have been in there. Nick and Tracy should not have been
No.
in there.
No.
They should have been following procedure, waiting for a negotiator.
Yes. They're
But they're both
supposed to,
kind of hotheads.
I mean, they're supposed to be waiting for a negotiator. But Tracy has already snuck in there. I'm not even sure she heard the part about how they were waiting for a negotiator. And then Nick just runs in there and nobody fucking stops him. But Dawkins recognizes Nick. He's like, oh, Officer Knight. And Nick goes, you don't want to die, do you, Dawkins? And Dawkins puts the gun to his head, and Nick ends up trying to hypnotize him into pointing the gun at the floor. But then Tracy appears behind Nick and distracts Dawkins at just the right moment. And he shoots at Nick just as they get the lights fixed. And then Nick rushes him, but he ends up shooting a couple more times, and Tracy takes the bullet.
Yep.
And he turns around, all vamped out, and Tracy sees that he's a vampire, and then starts to fall down the wall, leaving a trail of blood on the cinder blocks behind her. And there are two parts of what happens after this that just break me every fucking time. And it's when he grabs her and he's like, can we get some help in here? And then she goes, you could have trusted me.
We need some help in here!
You could have trusted me.
You could have trusted me. And then Nick holds his hand up, and his hands are very literally covered in blood. Because how would this have turned out? Did that bullet that hit her, was it the bullet that passed through him? Because bullets just go straight through him.
Right.
Did she stand behind him thinking he was a viable shield? Like he was providing partial cover? Because she's not wearing a vest. He could have been wearing a vest.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, him being there, she's not totally not at fault in this, but the actions that he takes directly lead to her getting shot. And she would have done none of that had she known he was a vampire. She would have just let him handle it.
Right.
But because he didn't trust her, she dies. And he very literally has blood on his hands. And I would like to propose that everything that happens in season 3 is because he should have left in Black Buddha and he overstayed his time. And these are all the ultimate consequences of what happens when an immortal stays too long.
The mortals around him got too comfortable with him.
They began to care about him too much. And he started to care about them too much. And then they started asking him for too much. Not that Tracy ever did. Poor Tracy never asked him for anything. She just wanted to be a good partner, and she wanted him to be a good partner. And she thought she had this super special secret that he wouldn't understand. And it turns out, voila, he was one of them all along. And those are the last words she says to her partner. Is you could have trusted me. And I want to point out that Dawkins also wouldn't have been there if Nick hadn't arrested him. And if he used his vampire powers to arrest Dawkins, then it's the exact same scenario that he was in with Skanky, where he used his vampire powers to arrest the bomber.
And then his partner accompanied the person that he'd arrested while they were getting transferred.
Yeah.
And died because of it.
So this really feels like y'all, having a vampire be a part of humanity ultimately leads to, does it ultimately lead to suffering? Is the fact that he tries to be involved in the mortal world what causes these tragedies? Well, I mean, the bombing thing was sort of outside of his. Yes, he would have gotten away otherwise, but he didn't make the bomb explode.
Right.
And ultimately, he didn't shoot Tracy. But it feels like more of a coincidence, and more than a coincidence, that both of his partners
It's
died
weird that it
tragically.
happened twice.
It's weird that it happened twice. And I'm just going to leave that there.
Okay, a counterpoint. There was a really good line in one of the Dune books about the character acknowledging that sometimes there are coincidences,
Okay.
and it's important to be able to acknowledge that and discard the assumption that something
Had to have led to this.
was correlated or
Yeah.
causally related.
Sometimes random shit happens.
Yes.
Yeah. Twice. But then we go
Yes.
immediately back into a LaCroix monologue because this feels like the right moment for it. And it is. And it always is.
But
and the answer to that question is yes.
2 points is enough to generate a pattern.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's a false pattern. But sometimes it's a real pattern.
But also the universe is weird. So,
Yeah.
haven't you tired of this incessant guilt? Hasn't it swayed your back and stooped your shoulders to the point of shrugging it off? You insist on taking responsibility for the actions and emotions of those around you when they alone are responsible. It is so foolish. It is so unnecessary. It is so mortal. And then we see Tracy getting taken away by the paramedics. And Reese is like, "You sure you're all right, Nick?" She made the call on this one, so don't blame yourself, which is actually, thank you, Reese. That was insightful and useful. She made the call on this one, don't blame yourself. And the paramedic comes over and she's like, yeah, Tracy took 2 bullets to the abdomen and then there's a bad head wound, but like, where'd the fucking head wound come from though?
Oh, I thought it was 2 bullets, 1 to the abdomen, 1 to the head.
No.
Oh, okay. I don't know
No,
where
she
the head
goes, there's
wound
2
came from.
bullets in the abdomen and then there's a bad head wound. Did they, maybe the concussive force threw her back against the wall? Okay, it's fine. And then we go to Nick, and he's at the hospital with Tracy. And Reese goes, Reese comes into the operating room, or the room where Nick is sitting on Tracy's bed, and he's just
The
sort of
ICU,
staring
I
at you.
guess.
Yeah, I see you. And Reese goes, they've done everything humanly possible. Now we wait. And then he tells Nick, sorry, dog, but Dawkins didn't make it. And you're going to take some heat on this one.
You threw him too hard.
Yeah, trucked him into a wall and the dude died. This could get really rough. And Nick's like, I can handle it. It's fine. Planning to leave tomorrow anyway. It's fine. I can handle it. And Reese goes, I mean, she might be okay, talking about Tracy, but I know what it's like to lose a partner. Nothing rips you apart like that. You know that, Nick. You lost Skanky. Which is the first time anybody has said his name in like 20 episodes.
Yeah.
And then we get a flashback to Black Buddha, and it's just where Nick goes, Skanky. And that hurt. I'm not going to lie. It hurt to see that again after so long. And then we see it in this episode, and I had forgotten. I don't think I've watched this episode maybe all the way through since I watched it the first time. And Reese goes, there is life after this once you get through, Nick. So just remember that. And Matt thought this maybe was foreshadowing. He was like, I think they live at the end because Reese said it. There's life after this once you get through it.
What I meant was Nick knows there's an afterlife.
Yeah.
And so I said this was foreshadowing because
I liked this as an Easter egg of Reese telling the audience that once we get through this, everyone lives at the end. There's life after this once you get through it. Like LaCroix holds the stake up and he's like, God damn it, Nicholas. And he just tosses it to the side. And he's like, this isn't how we're ending tonight. And then he just changes Natalie and they leave.
right.
That's how it goes in my head. And then we go to the black and white flashback. Every time we do these flashbacks, we kind of start in black and white and then we fade to color, which is, oh, God damn it, this is amazing. And why didn't we do this every single time? And it's Black Buddha again. And it's when Nick is blaming himself because he caught the bomber. And then we come back and Nick is looking at Tracy. And then he vamps out as if considering turning her. And he starts to lean over her just as Natalie comes in. And he ends up like shaking his head side to side, like he's getting closer to her, but he's also shaking his head as if he's fighting himself, like fighting the urge to save her. And then he ends up turning and kind of hisses at Natalie because he's like in vampire mode right now.
Right.
And Natalie's like, the fuck? And Nick goes, if she dies, it's my fault. And Natalie goes, how do you know that's what she wants? And why is it so easy to consider bringing her across and so impossible to consider bringing me? Honestly,
Yeah, in this scenario, Natalie's like, you were going to, like, I want you to do this thing with me and you're going to fucking cheat on me for
And
Tracy?
do the thing with Natalie, that if you think of it as sex every single time,
Right.
sure. But
It's a transformative experience.
honestly, this is my least favorite Natalie moment basically ever. Because this could just be a character call. Tracy would make a better vampire than Natalie. I'll say it. Tracy is pragmatic. Tracy learns quickly. Tracy is really young and flexible. Tracy would make a good vampire.
And she's compassionate.
Natalie, not so much. I am not sure how good of a vampire Natalie would be. I'm not sure Natalie would ever be able to fully accept what she was. I mean, she has encountered demons, ghosts, an actual ghost that followed her back to the morgue, and she ended up having a great resolution with her weirdly Russian like grandmother. Vampires. I mean, a lot of weird shit. And yet every time another supernatural thing came up, she's like, I don't know. I just don't know.
Whereas Tracy absorbs it and moves on.
Tracy just rolls with it. I honestly think this is a character call on Nick's part. I think after 800 years, you have an intuitive sense of who would be able to handle
After
it.
having turned so many people into vampires and observed what they are like as a vampire after observing them as a human, Nick has a better sense, or he has more experience with A to B comparisons than
Yeah.
like anybody else.
I mean, I think he knows if he turns Tracy, it's Tracy as a vampire. If he turns Natalie, it's going to kill her. It's going to fucking kill her.
Mm-hmm.
And he's well aware of that. Look at look at the burden he has to bear.
Right. It took him literally hundreds of years to build himself up to be able to resist the vampire.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think Tracy would be able to work with that. And I don't think Natalie ever would.
Right. He might have to take Tracy off for like 10 or 15 years to help like build her up.
Yeah.
Build up her
She's going to
mental
get her
framework.
shit together. Natalie it would kill her. It would literally just destroy her spirit to be turned into a vampire. And because of who she is, because of the fact that she refuses to believe that anything could be metaphysical, she is going to get turned into a supernatural being, and then all of a sudden she's just going to accept that the supernatural exists. That's not going to happen. She's too rigid to ever make a good vampire. And then Nick just walks off. He does not answer her because she's like, are you fucking kidding me? You're going to turn her into a vampire? You're not even going to consider turning me into a vampire? And Nick storms off, which means he doesn't turn Tracy. So Natalie being hella jelly in this moment keeps Nick from saving Tracy. And I'm not happy about it. I'm not. I am not. And I know why they did it. It's because it's the series finale. And we wanted to be done. We ended season 1 and they weren't sure if they were going to get to come back. And it was in this limbo and everybody was Are we still under contract? Are we not? Are we done? Are we coming back? Oh, we're coming back. And then we did season 2. And then the end of season 2, it was like, I don't know. Are we coming back? Are we not? And then season 3, it was like, y'all, we're going to burn it all down. We're going to burn it to the fucking ground. And to do that,
Which
you had to
seems
kill
kind of
everyone.
symbolic to say that life is not worth living. The life of the show
Yeah.
being in a state of, oh, are things going to work out?
Will they,
or should
won't
I
they?
just end it now
Yeah.
myself?
Oh, they end it.
Right.
They end it.
Which is symbolic for
Yeah.
the
I mean,
character arc.
that's why they do it. But also, I'm not happy about this. I'm not happy because Natalie makes the choice for Tracy.
Right.
Natalie chooses for Tracy.
Yep.
Natalie takes away Tracy, whatever agency Tracy may have had. I think you can extrapolate from the fact that she was willing to have a relationship with Vashon, that she was at least willing to entertain the idea of being a vampire. So you turn her into a vampire, she doesn't love it, and she ends up like Nick. Okay, well, at least she gets that chance. Now she doesn't. She just dies. And Nick goes to the Raven and it's closed and it's empty. And Lacroix has his bust out, which Matt was like, didn't that fall and break? Has he been lugging that around this whole time? I'm telling you, there is a vampire storage guy and he stores your shit. And that is probably he's probably the most lucrative dude. You just call him and you're like, listen, I got a bust. I don't really want to drag it around with me. He's like, no, say no more, fam. And he's just got a giant warehouse where he sticks everything.
Yeah.
If there's not, there should be. That's all I'm saying. And there's like a glass of wine or a glass of blood, obviously, next to the bus. Like, is it drinking? I don't know, whatever. And Nick goes to the back and Lacroix's getting ready to leave.
That's where they insert the Gollum arc.
I mean, y'all, Lacroix just lost somebody too. Lacroix just
Animated
had to
construct as supernatural creature
thank
arc.
you. I got you. Okay. Yeah. I heard you and then just rolled right along. Y'all, Lacroix just lost somebody too. He had to kill his own daughter in the Raven. He doesn't want to stick around. He's done. He is done. He recognizes that it is time to move on. He knows that all of the pain that's happening all around them is because it is past time for them to move. And so he's just going to do it. He's going to leave. And he tells Nick, it's time for both of us to leave. We've come full circle in this life. We are back to where we started and shit's going to start going down. We got to get out of here. And Nick is like, Lacroix, I'm in trouble. And Lacroix knows what he's talking about. He goes, yeah, I know. Like, I get it. Your partner, is she? And Nick goes, no, but her chances aren't good, especially since I left and didn't turn her into a vampire. Motherfucker. And then Lacroix's like, Nick, can't you see that you've overstayed your welcome? They no longer find the pain that you caused them to be acceptable. And those that do survive will not let your relationship remain as it was. They will demand change and you will be compromised because they can't change. Not to the extent, not with the same rapidity as a human being can change, as a mortal can change. You're asking the glacier to move faster and it can't. And so now you're going to know it's a glacier and not a person.
Mm.
And Nick's like, no, there's too many loose ends. And Lacroix's like, you've less looser. You've dipped. Like, we fled Paris one time. Remember when you killed Francesca, my daughter that I really liked and had the nice house? So I'm pretty sure we can just go. And Nick's like, no, I need to be here for Tracy. Natalie needs me. And Lacroix's like, shh, that's all bullshit. Nicholas, your time has come. And I will be at the loft tonight for your decision. And then I am leaving with or without you. Like, I'm going to go. I can't stick around. You waited, you son of a bitch. But Nick is like pacing back and forth, and Lacroix's just standing there leaning on his luggage like, Nick, you need to get some perspective. This is a life. It's a plaything. It's a thing we create and we have fun with, and then we throw it away and then we leave. And I get it. You're attached to these people. Dude, I get it. It's fine. But like, we got to go. Or these people that you have come to love, you're going to hurt. But Nick isn't really hearing him. He's not here to hear him. He was here for comfort, and he came and found Lacroix being like, all right, I'm going to dip. So you better dip with me. I dip, you dip, we dip. Let's go. Like, come on, let's do this. And it just, you know, this isn't the good moment for Nick. It's a great moment for Nick, but he doesn't think it's a good moment.
No, he doesn't.
We've all been there. He knows deep down exactly what he needs to do, but it's not what he wants to do. And so he is lying to himself. And Lacroix is not letting him lie to himself, so he leaves. Because this isn't what he came here for.
Right.
And so then we get another Lacroix monologue. And it's the one, for all the things that we are, there's a price to be paid. Love may be tasted but never savored. Guilt is a poison, and staying past our time is death.
Haven't you tired of this incessant guilt? Hasn't it swayed your back and stooped your shoulders to the point of throwing it off? You insist on taking responsibility for the actions and emotions of those around you when they alone are truly responsible. It is so foolish. It is so unnecessary. It's so mortal.
Yeah. And that is the entire theme of season 3, basically. Just all
Yeah.
rolled up into one neat little package.
Does that explain Vampire Dog, though?
Nothing explains Vampire Dog. He says, but if we truly care for a mortal, if we love one, then we must go.
If we truly care for a mortal, truly love one, then we must go. Isn't that something that you taught me?
If you bring her over.
Isn't that what you taught me?
Well, it depends on what kind of love.
Which is an interesting admission that Nicholas has been changing Lacroix just as steadily and surely as Lacroix has been at least trying to change Nicholas.
Right. That Lacroix's at least been like slowing down his descent towards humanity.
In you, like, towards, yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Nick's descent towards humanity. I thought you were
Yes.
talking about Lacroix. I was like, no, it's not. Is away from humanity, maybe. I think Nick acts like a tether.
Yeah, I think they're anchors for each other.
Yeah. And I think the push and pull, one pushes the other and one pulls the other. And in the end, they find balance.
Yeah.
It keeps Nick balanced on that precipice of, I'm a vampire wanting to be a mortal, but I'm not quite ready to take that final step. And then Nick keeps Lacroix on that, I am a vampire who's ready to do away with all morality and feeling and just become completely monstrous like my daughter. But you pull me back and you keep me anchored.
Yeah.
It's okay to be as weak as those we prey upon, is where they keep each other. And then we get our Be My Valentine flashback, because this episode was not painful enough. I had not been stabbed directly in the chest by the plot knife enough.
They had
So
not twisted it enough.
We had to throw in the fucking Fleur flashback. The one where it's like Lacroix who trying to say, yeah, I'm going to turn Fleur into a vampire so we can be together forever because I love her desperately. And the only way that we get to be together is if we're the same. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to turn her. And Nick being like, no, you're not. Because if you do, she won't be the woman you love anymore. You're going to be killing the woman you love.
Which is the argument that Nick and Lacroix are having now reversed.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder if this is another temperament thing. He's thinking Fleur is too delicate. Fleur is too... Delicate's a terrible word, and I hate that I said it out loud. Fleur is too sensitive. Fleur wouldn't handle it well. We don't know that. Nick doesn't know that. Nick hasn't seen her in like years and years and years and years and years.
Well,
but
it hasn't been that many years.
it's been a while.
Because we get the idea that she was like fully grown, which means like 11 in medieval times. So it's been like minimum 9 years maximum. I don't know how old she's supposed to be here. Like 20 years?
Yeah, she's got to be early 20s.
Yeah.
Late teens, early 20s. Otherwise, she'd already be married or dead. Which means very shortly after this, she gets married and then she gets dead.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I still don't love it. I still think this is... But I have said my piece on the LaCroix Fleur conundrum. If you don't know what I'm talking about, feel free, go back, listen to the Be My Valentine episode and pretty much every episode thereafter, which I watched.
Anytime Fleur comes up.
Anytime Fleur comes up. It's just because I think the way vampires are portrayed in this show is like, if you aren't Nick and you aren't constantly like upbraiding yourself with being too close to mortals and sort of flying too close to the sun and constantly finding yourself burned, they don't have a terrible life.
Yeah, like
Bottled blood exists. They hang out at a club
there's
all the
a
time.
bottling process that introduces the possibility of not killing people.
Yeah.
Like as an industry standard.
I think that's probably the one weakness of this show is it didn't sell me on the drawbacks.
Yeah.
It didn't sell me on the, oh no, that would be terrible. Like, oh no, I don't have to get up and go out in the sun every day. Oh no, what will I do?
What would I do if I just had to stay in my house all day long?
Oh, wait, I do
and
that.
never leave. Oh,
I
wait.
could do that already. I would never have to cook. I wouldn't ever have to clean up the kitchen. I would live like, I'm sorry. Hashtag, where's the bad part? Right? I mean, I get it. It's killing people, right? It's the urge to kill people. It's the fact that
it's the hunger.
it's the hunger, right? But
The hunger is
because
the
we
drawback.
we don't have a main character who is actively involved in conquering that. Because Nick is like, well, I've figured that out. I drink cow's blood, and like that's the one thing I have been reading some of the books, and that's the one thing I do like is being in his head.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's Intimations of Mortality, especially, is really good at portraying his struggle. Like when he goes to the Raven and he's talking to LaCroix, LaCroix has a blood, he has a cup of human blood. And Nick is like listening to LaCroix, but also thinking like, one sip. One sip's fine. Is one sip too many? No, it'd be fine. I could have a whole cup. No, it'd be okay. Like I'd be all right if I just had, it'd be fine. What's one cup? Humans eat candy. It's okay.
That sounds like a day tripper. And I'll just have one drink.
Yeah, one drink. It's fine. I'll have one. And okay, great. Like, okay, good. Now I get the drawback, the constant intrusive thoughts of like, it's okay, just kill her. It's fine, just do it. That's why I like Chuck Wendig's Double Dead, because we get his vampire voice inside his head.
Mm-hmm.
So he's trying to have a relationship with these people. He's trying to not be a complete asshole, but in his head, his beast or his vampire is like, rip their arms off, beat them with it. It's okay. Why don't we just kill all these people and then we'll be free? We can do what we want. These people suck. They're not nice to you. Let's just go ahead and kill them. I like that. You need that. Because we know intellectually, because Nick has tried to explain it to Natalie and by extension tried to explain it to us, that there's a lot going on that we aren't aware of. There's a struggle that we aren't seeing. But because of the limitations of a visual medium, we don't see it.
And the constraints of broadcast media in the 90s.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not seeing it.
If we could have had at least a few scenes as flashbacks or even like imaginings in the moment of what it would be, what it was like for Nick to just go full vampire.
Yeah.
Inhuman vampire that looked like the new Interview with a Vampire.
Yes.
Just to set the tone, just to give us an anchor point, a reference for what the experience would be like.
Yeah.
To just full out vampire violence, blood fountain,
Incinerator in the backyard.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that would have been a useful tool for like storytelling wise to convey what is actually going on in Nick's head
Right.
and what he actually did in the past so that he knows what he's capable of.
Right. Yeah. If we get a little bit more, I mean, this is a note for the reboot. This is a note for the reboot.
Yeah.
We get a couple moments. There's that one where, remember, Lacroix has been like whining and dining that lady, and Nick goes in to save her, and he oopsies kills her instead
Oops.
because she smelled too much like bacon or something. I don't know. Like he just couldn't handle it. And then we get the like, oh shit, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, but we need it to like, we gotta go hard. We gotta go like, there's a couple scenes of the Being Human UK where Mitchell has gone a little too hard and he like wakes up completely covered in blood.
Yeah.
That's what we need. Like we need their urges
A
are
bloodbath.
incredibly powerful and incredibly violent.
Yeah.
Violent. And violent. That was the most like southern word I said of this. I gotta dial it down. All right. Incredibly violent. Violent. I'm owing the violent.
Violent.
Thank you. I know, but I'm doing the violent. The
Right.
like adding an extra southern
The
syllable.
VAYY.
The diabetes. Yeah. All right. Incredibly violent. You get what I'm saying? Like we gotta know. We gotta know what he's fighting. And we can show that now. We couldn't show that in the 90s.
Yeah.
We did our best. They did their best. They really did. And that's why I think you're like, it falls flat when he's like, no, Natalie, it would kill you. And you're like, but how though? How hard would it really be? So you have to kind of, in your mind, you have to fill in that canon. And then it makes a lot more sense.
Right. And I think storytelling wise, the writers are they're working from that starting point
Yeah.
of we have an idea of how bloody and violent Nick's history is and what it's like inside of his head. But every time they try to convey that through the writing, they're held back by the red
Right.
tape of
Yeah, you can't show
broadcast
blood on television. You can have
ratings.
have one decorous red blood drip come out the side of somebody's mouth, and
Yeah.
that is about as good as it gets.
Yep.
And yeah, so when we do it again, that's what we'll strengthen the drawback, and then I won't be sitting here going, but like, why though? And we wrap up this whole Be My Valentine flashback, and we come back to Lacroix saying, leaving is the purest form of love. It's the get away from me, I'm not safe.
Right. So on the types of love, another one is agape, and the like shallow explanation is unconditional love.
Yeah.
The more nuanced version is something like the relationship that you have with someone where you are facilitating them growing as a person into a better person, or
Right.
just growing in the best way you can imagine possible. And that perspective on Nick loving Natalie is he wants, if he loves her that way, he wants to facilitate her growing into the best version of Natalie and recognizing that him being around is holding her back.
Yeah.
So if he wants to facilitate her actually growing as a person, he needs to get the fuck out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because her attachment
He
to
can't
him,
change.
right?
He will always be an anchor in time that cannot change, and it will only ever make her feel more and more
Or-
adrift.
I think he can change. It's just
They don't
because
change in the way a mortal would
he
change.
has a lot more inertia,
Yeah.
so it takes longer to change the direction of that ship.
Right.
She's a little surfboard on the waves,
It's
and
like
he's an
having-
ocean liner.
It's kind of like having a friend in high school and they're your best friend, and then you go off and you get married and you have kids and you go to college and you do all kinds of stuff and you come back and there's still the exact same friend that you had in high school.
Yes, I've had that experience a couple times.
And then it's like, okay, well, either I have to be the person I was in high school so that we can stay together and I don't get to grow and change in the way I normally would, or I have to let you go. But the opposite, the high school friend has to be like, I'm holding you back.
Right.
I'm going to have to let you go. Because mortals have a very short time on this earth. And ultimately, them dying will bring the vampire guy pain, but also, like, you're taking up a lot of their time.
Yeah.
He's taken up 6 years of her time. Which means canonically she's 35 now. Because she's 28. She's 28. It's her 28th birthday.
When they meet. So
When they
she's
meet.
34.
Oh, which means her birthday is April 14th. Yeah.
Happy birthday, Natalie.
Almost happy birthday, Natalie. And she's 28. And so that means she's 34. Those are some crucial years for Natalie that she has spent investing a lot of her time and emotional energy in Nick. And he can never echo that back, not in the same way that a mortal can.
Right.
And so she's still reading this notebook and she reads a whole passage, but the end of it is really the most poignant part. And it's, I'm not coming, I'm going, I'm gone. And the letter also says, like, everyone else's pain is my problem, but mine is only my problem. And of course, that's a psychiatrist thing, but I also think a lot
I
of
imagine
women
that's
feel
a
that
common
way.
problem when you're a counselor or therapist.
Yeah.
Is
Who watches
like-
The Watchmen?
like there has to be some kind of monitoring or like that
You're getting trauma
you
dumped
have
on
to,
all the time.
You have to set up some kind of environment where you have somebody monitoring you as a therapist, because it is like established. It's known that you're vulnerable
Yeah.
to exactly Laura's situation. You are getting exposed to some really nasty parts of the human psyche, and you are a human person, so you are susceptible to the same things as the people you're helping. And just like they can't get themselves out of the situation that they're in mentally, psychologically, so they need someone external to push them. You also need someone external to push you sometimes.
Yeah.
When you get into certain mental states.
Right. Just because you're a psychiatrist doesn't mean you're healed.
Right.
Yeah. And Nick is driving. Like, we cut from Natalie to Nick, and Nick is driving around in his Cadillac because he just left Lacroix, which was a very unsatisfactory meeting. And there's a report coming over the radio, and he turns off the cop radio. And pretty much that's him being done, because we never go back to the precinct. We never turn it back on. We never check back in with any cases. We never do any more police work. That's it. He turns the cop radio off and click, click. That's it. Finished. Done being a vampire detective. And he ends up turning on the regular radio. But of course, there's no Nightcrawler. It's just a lady. And somebody calls in and is like, where the hell's the Nightcrawler? And she goes, he just said it was time to move on, man. And that's it. So the Nightcrawler's
So
finished.
now we have confirmation that
all the status
Lacroix's
quo
on the way out.
is no longer status nor quo. Like, it's done. All the things that we've relied on for the last 70 some episodes are finished. And then we get the Black Buddha flashback to when Nick was going to just dip and leave Natalie behind. And she shows up at the loft to yell at him. And honestly, he should have just left. Like, he should have just left.
Mm-hmm.
Natalie could have moved on. Tracy never would have had him as a partner. He could have just gone and been done. But we wouldn't have gotten season 3, so okay. And we also get a little bit of the clip from Human Factor where it's Jeanette, and he's telling Jeanette, you know what, ghosting me was like wrong. I did not like it. That was the wrong decision. And Jeanette's like, I left because of you and because of your quest, because a vampire's heart must be cold. It has to be. That's how we survive immortality. But 1,000 years is a long time to live with a cold heart. So he's wrestling with like, why did I stay? And if I stayed for Natalie, doesn't that mean that I should choose Natalie? I should choose passion. I should choose to not have the cold heart anymore. And while he's wrestling with this, he shows up at his loft and Natalie is waiting for him. And she stands up and tells him that Tracy Vetter passed away 20 minutes ago.
Tracy Vetter passed away 20 minutes ago.
Yep.
And then we cut to a clip of seeing her get covered up with a sheet and wheeled out of the hospital. And I'm not going to revisit it, but that's Natalie's fault. Like, it's not Natalie's fault. It's not. It's not. It's the
It
guy
is
that
causally
shot her.
related to Natalie's actions.
I'm just mad at the way that whole... I'm mad because they squinted at Natalie's character in that moment.
Mhm.
Because she was completely willing to have Nick turn her brother. But then when it came to Tracy, she was like, but what about me?
Right, which,
And that doesn't feel like Natalie.
no.
And that's the only reason I'm mad at that whole scene. Because we squinted at Natalie's character. And honestly, you owed us a little better than that. But, okay. And then Nick is like, LaCroix thinks I'm a fool for feeling guilty and for trying to atone. This must be what's on his heart, his mind right now, because he just comes right out with it. He's like, LaCroix thinks I'm being an idiot. He thinks he has thought for 800 years that this guilt, like holding on to guilt and trying to atone, is me being foolish. And I'm starting to think he might be right, because all it has ever caused me is pain and death. In the 6 years that I've known you, Tracy has died, Cohen has died, Skanky has died. Like, a bunch of love interests of mine have died over the entire series.
And then even Natalie's brother,
Yeah.
I mean, he died. That wasn't Nick's fault. But then Natalie's probably a little traumatized by the whole seeing her brother transformed into this violent creature.
Yeah.
That's pain that is caused to Natalie because of Nick.
There's been a lot of hurt to Natalie.
Right.
He's also helped Natalie. He's also saved her, but he's hurt her a lot more than he's saved her.
Yeah.
He has with affectioned her a lot more than he has I loved you. And she comes back with, I mean, you've more than made up for all of the deaths that you've caused over the centuries. And I mean, you've saved some lives. Yeah, he saved like, if he has saved,
That's a very
if
tongue-in-cheek
he
statement.
saved generously 100 lives in the time that he has been a police officer in Toronto, if you do the math, Natalie, that is not anywhere near the thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people that he has murdered in his lifetime.
I propose this. Nick saved the whole planet in the Meteor episode.
No, that's what you said during the watch along too. You're like, he saved the whole planet. That counts. That all counts. He didn't save the planet. They weren't going to die.
He was crucial to the cessation of riots.
Okay, I would give him credit.
Worldwide rioting.
I would give him credit if he had gone full on Armageddon and been like, I can survive the trip into space. I'm a vampire. Send him up in
Except in space, there's nowhere to hide from the sun.
I don't want to laugh right now. That's why you're doing this. I know what you're doing. But honestly, this just illustrates how little Natalie understands. If he had killed 2 people a year in 800 years, that's 1,600. No. If he'd killed 2 people a month, that's what I was going to say. If he killed 2 people a month, 30 people. Say he killed 30 people a year over 800 years. That's 24,000 people.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure even if he'd saved the entire planet from worldwide rioting, that doesn't make up for the wanton slaughter of a small town. That's not even a town. That's a city. He's killed
that's a small city.
You could populate a city with the people that he has killed.
Which is the graveyard that we see when he's in the afterlife.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's gone to the afterlife, and the people in the afterlife are like, yeah, no, man, you're fucked. That ain't,
Right.
Yeah.
So not only does he have intimations that he's screwed, like existentially,
Yeah.
he has firsthand experience that he is screwed like, eternally.
Right. Right, because he went to the afterlife and he was like, cool, I'm ready now. And they were like, what? No, you had your shot, man. And you fucking blew it. And he's like, what? No. And then they showed you your own soul and it was covered in maggots. Remember the squelching sound? I remember the squelching sound.
So on that topic, maggots are historically a medical treatment to remove the dead flesh and like prevent / recover from infection.
Okay.
I think in the US, maggots are actually an FDA approved medical treatment for like infections, for
Okay.
like rotting, like gangrene and stuff. But it just doesn't get applied because everybody's like,
It's
"Ew,
gross."
maggots,
Yeah.
right? What if the maggots on his corpse that he sees
Yeah.
in this vision, the maggots represent his redemption arc?
Oh. Like
They're cleaning all the dead, rotting tissue from his soul
okay.
to leave behind the squeaky clean.
That's
soul.
not what the show was going for, but I like that better. So let's just go with that.
And sure, there's still a lot of like rotting tissue on there,
Yeah.
but it's on a trajectory.
Right. Well, that's, yeah.
But like, where's the intersection of atonement, equalization?
Right. I like that better because that would involve him having some agency in his afterlife instead of just the Lacroix spirit guide going, nah, man, nah, you fucked. And him going, la, 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 la.
Right,
I think
and
I can be with Natalie in the afterlife.
You always need the possibility.
Yeah,
Otherwise, there's no point.
right.
And even if it's the, what's the Dumb and Dumber? So you're saying there's a chance. And so narratively, just as, I guess, as humans,
Right.
like for the human perspective on what you can be as in the future, you need a chance. You always get another try.
Yeah.
To a certain point. But I think like on the eternal time scale, there always needs to be the option, an opportunity
Yeah.
for redemption. And so I try to take that perspective when I'm
Yeah.
looking at a narrative.
There's a place for positivity in this without it being toxic positivity. It's not like, I'm going to be fine because I believe I'm going to be fine. It's like, I've been working really hard and I have to believe there's a payoff or what's the fucking point?
Right. And the experience is not a positive experience for Nick.
Yeah.
To go through all this struggle and pain of resisting his darker urges.
Right.
To say that, oh yeah, Nick, all that suffering and pain you've been putting yourself through for, I guess, like 100 years is when it was his last like cutoff point.
Yo-yo.
To say
He's
that
been yo-yoing. Like yo-yo
You've
dieting.
been voluntarily
Yo-yo morality.
like participating in this suffering and pain, and it's working.
Yeah.
Now he's motivated to continue doing that.
Right.
But if someone says, oh yeah, you're on the right track, you're doing a good job.
You left the
that,
station, but you're not at your
that,
destination.
that might invalidate him
Yeah.
a little bit if he got too much encouragement.
Oh, yeah.
And so, yeah, like symbolically, that was my interpretation from the afterlife experience.
I
was
think it's
that the
good.
maggots were a
I like it.
representative of his redemption
Yeah,
arc.
because on the surface, it's like, oh, gross, I'm being eaten by maggots. But it's like, oh, no, maybe they're only eating the parts of me that are bad.
Right. And I
Gotcha.
may be overall diminished, like
Yeah.
in quantity. I don't know, like soul
I will
volume,
be.
whatever, soul mass. But I'll be clean at the end.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I like it. I like it. And it gives you hope for the end of this episode, kind of. Because he tells Natalie, I'm leaving. And she goes, not without me.
And we already know Natalie is leaving too. Natalie has packed her bags. She's going.
Yeah, because when we see that scene of her in the morgue where she's reading the notebook and she puts it in the evidence box, everything's packed up. Like she's quit. She's ready to be done. And Nick tells her, no, I'm leaving because of you. You don't want my love. You don't want this. You don't understand what you're asking, and it will only destroy you. And Natalie's like, cool, I hear you, but can we do the whole Janet and Bob thing? Like, I think we could make this work. She loved him so much, it cured her. And I think you love me that much. And I love Natalie a lot. But honest to God, he has done nothing to justify this belief.
No.
No. And I think that this is her gaslighting herself. Like, she's calling her own bluff. Like, either this works and that means he loves me, or it doesn't work and that means he never loved me. But either way, I get what I want because I either get out or I get Nick.
Right. And she just wants an end to the
She wants a
the
resolution.
uncertainty.
And
yeah.
what's a greater resolution than this? And Nick is like, it's a lot more complicated than that, which is hashtag he's not that into you. This part is tough. It gets continuously tougher because then Natalie is like, I'm willing to take my chances. I've made up my mind. This is how we're going to do this. Either it's suicide by vampire or you get better and I cure you with my love blood and we get to be together forever.
Right. There's three options. She dies. She cures Nick and helps him turn into a vampire, help him turn back into a human,
Yeah.
like Janet. Or she herself gets turned into a vampire, which, not the greatest outcome, but she still gets to be with Nick. And she actually gets to learn from firsthand experience the struggle that he's been going through to, like, stay with her.
Yeah. Yes, we know Janet is Jeanette. We're just being funny.
Human Jeanette is
Janet. So Natalie says, I'm willing to take my chances. And Nick is like, I'm not. I'm not willing to do this. This feels vaguely non-consensual. Like, not non-consensual in that, how do I want to phrase this? It's like she keeps asking him until the part of him that has wanted to do this the whole time just completely overrides his self-control.
Right.
Because he's like, no, I don't want to do this. And
And I
she's
think
like,
in that
I think we should. And he's like, no,
In
I don't
that
think
sense,
I should.
I think we could say, or because of how she's persuading Nick
Yeah.
to do it, that kind of implies that she does have a better understanding of Nick's internal experience than we've been arguing.
Well, she may have a better understanding than even she knows.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because then she says, it's my choice too, Nick. And yes, it is her choice to be with him. It is her choice to become a vampire, possibly. It is her choice to commit suicide or complete suicide via vampire. But Nick ultimately is the one who gets to say no in this.
Right.
He is not obligated to provide her with services because she has been helping him out. This feels a little creepy. This is when you have to squint as a viewer and you have to kind of ice skate over the top of all of these themes, because if you look too deeply at anything that's about to happen, it all gets a little murky. And I don't honestly mind the murkiness. What I mind is that none of this makes sense from Natalie's character up until this point. We know she is vaguely religious. She is agnostic at best, because
Right.
she has mentioned God or nature or whatever.
She's spiritual, but
She is,
not
yeah.
theistic.
But we haven't had any real good evidence that every time she comes up to like a supernatural or a spiritual barrier, she's like, nope, science. Except right now. And I get it in the context of she is acting irrationally. This was the final straw. This was the final fucking straw in a house of straws that she has been building around herself regarding Nick.
Mhm.
And finally, Nick is like, look, you got me to stay 1 year longer, and look what happened. Tracy died. And yes, again, nobody killed Tracy except the guy who shot her. But I have to imagine Natalie feels at least slightly culpable in all of the things that have happened this season as well.
Right. You can be involved in something and legitimately ask the question, what could I have done differently to prevent the outcome?
Yeah. And
he
Yeah.
has to know that being a partner to somebody that does not know he is a vampire, and then every time they get into a violent situation, a risky situation, like as a team, he just runs in and, runs straight towards the danger. And
Yeah.
his partner is like, shit, my absolutely human partner is just running straight into the face of danger. I need to back them up. He should realize at this point that way of behaving with a human partner is dangerous to the human partner, because they're going to try to back him up, and when he doesn't need it,
yeah,
because they don't know any better.
except Skanky didn't, but Skanky,
Skanky kind of did.
to be fair to Nick, we started out this whole series, he didn't have a partner. He intentionally didn't have a partner.
That's true.
He only ends
Yeah.
up partnered with Skanky because he's not solving these murders quickly enough.
And it's getting so much bad press that the police station, the Stone Tree, is like,
Yeah.
for the sake of getting this actually solved in a timely manner, I'm pairing you up with a daytime cop.
Yeah.
So that someone is always working on the case.
Right. And they intended originally to have Skanky as a daytime cop and him as a nighttime cop, and them just be switching off, but it got too complicated trying to film both things.
And we got the buddy cop situation.
And we got the buddy cop. And Skanky was a great partner for him, because he was
Yes.
like, Skanky, go around. And Skanky was like, heard, sir. And he would just go around.
Right. And Skanky trusted
Right.
that when Nick said, I'm going into danger, but I can handle it, Skanky was like, okay,
I'm here to back you
I
up.
trust you.
Yeah. Because Skanky wasn't hungry for it like Tracy is.
Right.
And then he sort of falls into having Tracy as a partner, because Tracy is supposed to be his partner for the week that Skanky is gone.
Right.
And then Skanky dies in the plane crash, and, well, I guess Tracy is your new partner. And what's he supposed to say? I don't want the commissioner's daughter as my partner?
Right. And so then he starts to act more like a mentor to her.
Right. And so I think he's like, well, I'm going to make the best of a bad situation. But in the end, he still has a lot of collateral damage just because of what he is. And she ends up being collateral damage.
Yeah.
And Nick is a simple beast. And Natalie knows it. And that's when she's taking advantage of him in this moment. She comes in, she tells him Tracy is dead. And that immediately puts him in like a headspace where he's extremely susceptible. And she's like, this is my choice too. Did LaCroix ever talk to you about faith? Faith is a buzzword for him, and she knows it.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, how about love and afterlife? Anything. And Nick fires back with, faith is a mortal folly, which is him attempting to distance himself in this moment. He's like, I keep telling you no and you're not getting it. And so I need to not act human for you right now. I need to drop the mask a little bit. And he's like, sorry, but faith is a mortal thing. I can't think of faith in the same way. I'm not human. And Natalie's like, okay, yeah, well, you sounded like LaCroix right then. Are you
and
sure that's
I think
how
in
you
this
feel?
situation, Nick is leaning on his like LaCroix rhetoric, but he doesn't have LaCroix's state of mind.
Well,
I
as
guess.
soon as Natalie is
And
like,
so
ooh,
what-
you sound like LaCroix, he ditches it.
Right. And I think here Natalie is a lot more verbally fluent
Yeah.
in an argument, like a debate situation.
Well, she knows he doesn't want to be LaCroix, that he spent a long time not
Right.
preparing
And
not
so
to be
she
LaCroix.
knows exactly what buttons to push.
Yeah. It's like when you tell me,
I bet
okay, Becky.
Natalie was on the debate team.
It's like when you tell me, okay, Becky, and I'm like, oh God, okay. I guess that means I'm being my mother. And, you know, she goes, are you sure that's how you feel? Because she knows that losing himself in LaCroix's whole thing is one of his fears. And I don't want to make it sound like Natalie is being the villain right now, because she's not. I don't think in her own mind that this is what's happening. I don't think she's seeing herself as manipulating her. I think she has a thing she wants, and she has never pushed Nick before, but apparently he needs to be pushed. And so,
Right. And part of their relationship is her recognizing that Nick needs to be pushed, which in their history has been Nick needs to be pushed into doing things that line up with his ultimate goal of becoming human.
in her mind, this is the same.
Yes. And
Because-
so she's recognizing, okay, here's a thing that Nick can do to make himself human. It's the most plausible.
It's the only proven method we have seen.
Right.
It's worked. We've seen it work. This could work. I'm running out of time. I have spent 6 years trying to save him, and he's about to leave, and that'll be it. I'm done. I can't do anything more. I will not have another opportunity to try to save him and to be with him.
Right.
And so my only options right now are to try to save him with,
Right. And so the entire history of their relationship has been Natalie, from a more objective perspective, recognizing this is the thing that Nick needs to do. He's not doing it by himself.
yeah, I need to make him do it.
So I need to push him to do it. And so that's what she does.
Yeah. I mean, that's what she does, and that's what she's doing. But I mean, that's why you have to skate over the top of this a little bit, because she's pushing him to have sex with her. And ultimately, he chooses to do it. It's not like, this isn't a assault situation or anything, but it is a place where she is pushing him past where he feels comfortable. And ultimately, they both suffer for it. And we cut to the flashback of For I Have Sinned. And this is the Joan of Arc flashback where he's offering to make her into a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
And she talks to him about faith. And he's like, how come you're not afraid of death? And she's like, faith, Nicholas, pure, simple faith. And this is when Matt was like, what if a person became a religious symbol?
Oh,
You
yeah.
totally broke the
Thank
tension
you.
of the moment. You're like stop right now. And he's like, the flashback's going to have a druid in it.
a druid forest.
I mean, the reboot.
Where-
The reboot's going to
yes.
have a druid. The
Yes.
whole forest is the whole forest.
But
It's just simple.
If Joan of Arc, okay, so Joan of
Yeah.
Arc was a religious symbol
Yeah.
at the time. She was a symbol of religious heresy by one group, but then she was this like rallying figure amongst the opposite group,
Yeah.
where she herself was like the avatar of like God
Yeah.
in France.
Yeah.
And what if he tried to bite her and got burned
Oh, God damn it.
because like so many people are imbuing her with religious belief.
Yeah. I don't know. It's something to
And-
think about.
Yeah.
But Natalie, after we come back from the flashback, she says, I won't accept that the sum of our existence can only be measured by the few short years we spend here. It would make
How unscientific of her.
yes. It would make everything that we believe meaningless. Would it? It depends on what you believe, I guess. It depends on whether you feel like you are living for the afterlife or whether you are living life to live the life that you're living. And she goes on with, it would make our lives meaningless. I know that's not true, and so do you. Faith is not a mortal folly, and if it is, then you are the most mortal man I have ever known. She is hitting all of the high points.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, Nick, your faith is great. Your faith is what makes you you. I love your faith. I kind of have faith sometimes too, depending on the writer for the episode. I get what she's saying. She's like, this can't be it. This can't be it. I can't have discovered this wonderful thing exists. And then I go back to my life and I just die and it's all over and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. And he gives her this look like, oh, Natalie, you're so young. And she's like, okay, I'm almost there. Almost got it. And Nick tells her, you can't deny what I am. You can't deny that this is like, I am trying to tell you something and you are not listening. And Natalie goes, you can't deny what's in your heart. I kind of wish. I love Garrett Wynn Davies as an actor. I really do. But I wish he and Catherine Disher had just a touch more chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
They're fine. They're fine. And I believe them as best friends. And I believe them as best friends who you wish would start dating and see if it could become more. But you never feel like they are just a hair's breadth away from fucking each other.
Right.
Like you get with Nick and Jeanette. Think about the fuck me energy from season 1 between Nick. This has become a retrospective. Do you know that? Because we have talked about almost every single season at least once this entire time. Just think about the fuck me energy between Nick and Jeanette in the first season where every time they looked at each other, you were like, they want to do it right now. You never get that with Natalie.
No.
And you just don't. And so when you get to this scene where she's like, I know you love me. I know what's in your heart. You're like, ugh. It feels like she's pushing him, but I think it's supposed to feel like she's pushing him.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's supposed to feel like they are both walking into a mistake because neither one, Natalie's being honest and he's being honest, but they aren't listening to each other.
Right. They're both talking at each other.
Yeah. And Natalie tells him, I have faith that there's a future for us here or somewhere else. And I believe in you. I trust you here or somewhere else, being like on this earth or the next. Make love to me, Nick. Just take a little at a time, like Janet and Bob did. And this hurts my heart so much because Natalie always believed that Nick loved her more than he actually did. And to his credit, he has given her nothing but with affection. But she wanted it to be more. And so she made it more. And this is where it led us. Because Nick responds with, I'm afraid of what might happen. And Natalie says, I'm not afraid of death or an eternity in darkness as long as I can spend it with you. All I have is faith and love. And all I'm asking is for you to make love to me. I trust you. This is where Nick needs to remember baby. When the lady said, I want to be immortal. And he was like, cool, I got you, fam. And he needs to be like, clarification required. By eternity in darkness, do you mean death or do you mean becoming a vampire?
Right.
I need to know that up front. Before we do this, I need to know.
Yeah. We need to both make sure we're using the same definitions.
Yeah, because she could very well have meant, I'm not afraid if you make a mistake and I die, okay. But if I become a vampire with you, great. Or if you're like, you're cured, even better. But like, those are the two options I would like you to go with. But instead, he's like, got it. You want to die, or I get better. Cool. Let's do this.
Right. So from Natalie's perspective, there's one failure, which
Yeah.
is she dies. And then there's two win scenarios.
Yeah.
Where win scenario A, Nick becomes human, is better than win scenario B, but win scenario B is better than lose scenario C.
Yeah.
And for Nick, there's win scenario A, where he becomes human. There's lose scenario B, where Natalie becomes a vampire.
Yes.
And there's lose scenario C, where Natalie dies.
Yes.
And I actually, if we're putting them in order, lose scenario B is Natalie dies, which is better than lose scenario C, where Natalie becomes a vampire.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is where I kind of wish that this show had been made in like the True Blood era, where we're like, oh, we can show tits on TV because we could have. She asks him to make love to her and he's like, okay. And then he just bites her. I know. Okay. So there's a commercial for Forever Night that Kristen just put up on her Night Vision 1228 channel. And there's a crack about, can you imagine 800 years of never making love from the neck down? So I get it. So female vampires in this respect, I've always felt would have an advantage because they're not required to. No anatomy needs adjustment in order to have traditional intercourse. So a
Just your
hole
teeth.
is a hole is a hole. You would maybe just need lube. I don't know. I just said that, and there we are. I'm going to leave it in. But like a guy vampire, if the flow of blood isn't there, well, then other things aren't happening, right?
Right.
But there are other ways for him to help Natalie have as much fun in this situation as he's about to have. And win-win, they still involve eating. But instead, he's like, cool. And he just turns into a he just does the vampire face. Like, I could take you to the set and fuck sheets, but LaCroix's going to be here in 30 minutes. So we got to snap, get this done.
Right.
Although
No foreplay.
he does like to watch. If he shows up, are you cool with me continuing? Okay. So no foreplay. Just he goes, okay. And like, this is where it gets serious. So the lighting in this scene is phenomenal because they're only lit by the fire. And we keep that really intense. There's a word for it. It's not contrapposto. That's my art history left me. But there's a whole period of art which is known for its intense light and in like deep shadow. And that's what this feels like because we get really soft, warm, but bold lighting on our actors. And then everything else is pretty much in darkness.
Yeah.
And it makes us really, really focus on them right now. And he tells her, I won't leave you. Whatever happens, we'll be together forever. And this is where she needs to be like, clarification. Did you understand what I was saying? That I either want to become a vampire or you become human. I don't want you to just let me lay
Right.
there.
Here's the written contract terms. The
Look,
sign at the
we're
bottom.
about to get into a kink scene. Let's sit down and negotiate. Okay? Like,
Literally a life and death situation.
it's done. That's how you do it. Okay, we're about to play out this scene. We need to make sure everybody knows all the rules so that everybody has a good time. Because does she think she's about to be made into a vampire? Did she say eternity of darkness and he didn't clarify? Did she think when she says darkness, does she mean vampire? And when he hears darkness, he hears death? We should have talked that out, but we didn't because nobody's acting rationally right now. This isn't a rational moment. This isn't a sit down and discuss it. We're totally in our feels, and this is the ultimate. This is where we've been heading all along. And I don't care that we squinted at Natalie's character earlier. I love that this show brought us here.
Yeah.
That this show promised that if he got too close, he would hurt her. And as soon as he gets too close, he hurts her.
Yeah.
So they promised and they delivered. And she gets nothing. She gets no making out. He kisses her wrist and then he's like, well, that felt like foreplay. And then he just goes straight for the neck. And he bites her. And then we get these moments where she is flashing to all of his flashbacks. She's seeing visions of him throughout the years. And remember in Francesca, when he's talking to her about the blood, he says, can you imagine the temptation to learn all their secrets, to let them know yours?
Mm-hmm.
Implying that when you bite somebody, that psychic connection could go both ways. So not only are you experiencing their life, they are experiencing yours, which means in this final moment, Natalie at last understands what Nick is talking about. Because he's told her stories about his past before, but not everything. Certainly not the most painful things.
Mm-hmm.
And she dies finally knowing just how bad of a person Nick was. And how hard he fought. And what
Right.
he's gone through. And she finally understands what pushing him meant. And Nick lays her down, like he lays her down on the ground. And he sits up like, oh shit. Just as Lacroix walks in. Because he was like, oh, Nick is...
Lacroix was there the whole time. He was just hiding.
Because he had extra watch. And then Lacroix goes, huh, great. Now all that remains is for us to turn off the lights, lock the door, and we're on our way. Unless you were planning on bringing her into the family, like, I don't hate her. We could have her around for a while. And then Nick just sits there and he goes, oh, Nicholas, you have thought this through, haven't you?
Well, all that remains now is to turn out the lights and lock the door on our way out. Unless, of course, you have decided to add her to our entourage. Oh, Nicholas, you have thought this through, haven't you?
I love that line so fucking much. I love Lacroix in this moment. This is Lacroix at his most. I love you, Nicholas. I love you like a brother. I love you like a son. I love you in all the ways that someone can love you.
Right. And this is Lacroix working to facilitate Nick's growth as a person, regardless of the discomfort that Nick has to go through or whatever. Just this is
him,
Lacroix
yeah.
sincerely working to help Nick grow as a person
Yes.
into Lacroix's best version of Nick.
Well, who knows Lacroix? Who knows Nick like Lacroix knows Nick?
Right.
Nobody knows Nick like Lacroix knows Nick.
Right.
Nobody knows Lacroix like Nick knows Lacroix. They have been caught in this spiral of pain and friendship for 800 years. They have pushed every single one of each other's buttons. They have been pushed back. They have embraced each other. They have pushed apart again. They have tested each other, and then they have traveled together as like best friends, more than best friends, for 800 years.
Right. They've even hated each other, and then while hating each other, saved the other one
Yeah.
from certain death.
Yes. For 800 years. So as soon as Nick sees that, or as soon as Lacroix sees that, his first thought is, oh shit, I know what this is going to do to Nick. I know how long he is going to carry this. And I really hope he did this because he wanted to. Because if he didn't, the consequences are possibly more than he can bear. And Lacroix has to have been waiting for a long time for Nick to finally come to a point where he can no longer bear it. He has been living for centuries with the knowledge that Nick is only ever one traumatic event away from the possibility of him losing him.
Mm-hmm.
They should be comfortable in immortality with each other. Like they're both immortal creatures. He should not be worrying about it. But kind of contrary to what his nature would allow him to be able to do, he has to worry about losing Nick in the same way you would worry about losing a mortal.
Right.
And we have seen it throughout some of the episodes where he will push Nick to a certain point and then he'll back off because it's like, I can't push you any farther. It might be too far.
Right.
He does that in Be My Valentine. I don't believe for a minute that he believes that Nick wants to turn Natalie or that Nick is using Natalie. I don't believe that. But he knows this isn't his moment. If he pushes Nick too far, he could lose Nick.
Right.
And he has to have walked into this situation and gone, oh no, I have to navigate this carefully for us to get out of this. Which is why he looks terrified through half of this scene. Because as soon as he says, oh, Nicholas, you have thought this through, haven't you? Nick goes, I couldn't stop myself. I've taken too much. And Lacroix...
Well, he took less than his first wife.
Well, because Lacroix is like, oh, no, like, we could still do this.
Right. Like, you left enough in there, we can turn her.
I think what he means is I took too much to not make a decision. Like, I have to either turn her
Right.
into a vampire or let her die. I didn't take
Right.
too much. I didn't take just enough so that she could go back to work tomorrow. I took too much.
Yeah.
And Lacroix's like, okay, well, we can bring her across or we could let her die, but you need to decide. Like, this is up to you. I'm here for you. I'll support you in whatever decision you make, but like, you have to make a decision. And Nick goes, Lacroix, is it possible for a vampire to have faith? And Lacroix has to be like, oh no, oh shit, oh my God. Whew, okay. He goes, that's a really weird question to ask at this moment. It's a really weird question, Nick. And Nick goes, have you ever had faith? And Lacroix, I mean, he could lie. He could lie, but it's not in him.
Right.
It's not. He goes, I've seen too much. No, I don't have any faith. Sorry. I've been around. I almost overlap with Jesus. So not really. Like, I remember when this was just a little thing and now it's way blown out of proportion. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I absolutely, maybe he might have faith in a higher power, in something else, but to have like the Christian version of faith, highly unlikely. And Nick goes, maybe I haven't seen enough. And Lacroix's like, okay, Nick, but you know time heals all, right? So we can just be done with her. We can be done with this life. We can this was a good lesson. We learned a lot of lessons. And then we can move on and maybe you can stop denying what you are and then we don't end up back here again. Okay? And Nick goes, I can't condemn her to this. I can't make her like me. I can't do that. Oh, God, Nick. Like, you could, though. You could. Her whole thing was she wanted to cure vampirism.
Right.
So what if you're like, okay, I made you into a vampire. If you want, I'll give you like 100 years. If you haven't cured vampires in 100 years, we can just walk out into the sun together. Is that cool? Like, we cool? Cool. But no, he just kisses her. And then he turns around and looks at Nigel, at Lacroix. And Nigel motherfucking Bennett is crushing it. He looks so scared. I was actively crying during this scene when we watched it last time.
Yeah.
And Lacroix's like, oh, we have time for a burial if you like. Like, I will throw you a bone here. I will show you that I'm understanding. I get it. This hurts. My God, I am here for you. Like, what do you need? What support do you need from me in this moment? You want to bury her? We could bury her.
Right. He's throwing Nick every bone, every opportunity to, okay, Nick, let's do what you feel like you need to do so that we can tie up your loose ends and move on to the next thing.
Yeah. And Nick gets up and he grabs his stick, his like steak stick. And he goes, she had faith in me and in what's beyond, and that we could have a life together. And that this would be a beginning and not an end. Yeah, but did she mean you turning her into a vampire? Like, I think we should have clarified that. But that's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Whew. I'm sorry, that like bubbled up and out of me right now. I mean, this is the part where we have to skate a little because he did murder her. And now he's like, but I'm going to join her in the afterlife. And this feels a little Family Annihilator.
Yeah.
Like the phenomenon of Family Annihilators, where you generally have a man, usually the male in the relationship, who will murder his entire family for their own good.
Yeah.
And it's just like, gosh, you're so close to that. And he says that this would be a beginning. It wouldn't be an end. Whatever is after this, we're going to be together. This is me finally making a decision. I need a resolution. I need this to end. And I'm choosing how it ends. And did she know that she was willingly inviting him to commit suicide?
Maybe not consciously.
Because he says, whatever happens, we'll be together. And she's like, cool. She has to know that there's a possibility that that means that he kills himself to follow her. She's okay with it.
Yeah, and for her, it may have been just, oh, like he needs an out in the worst case scenario to like convince himself to do this.
Yeah, and we're not going to solve this.
To convince himself to attempt this.
Yeah.
And so she may have been like, but that's not going to happen. So sure.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll give you permission for your out in the worst case scenario, but you'll do fine.
Since I'm very clearly asking you to turn me into a vampire, that's not going to happen. So it's fine.
Right.
We're not going to solve this. I'm just posing the question. That's something for you to think about on your own. I'm going to put a pin in it because I don't like to think about it, because it sort of makes Natalie more of the villain in this. And I think that everybody in this is a victim. And everybody in this is a victim of what happens when a being that is inherently chaotic, like a vampire, stays too long and creates too much chaos. And I just want to leave it at that. But it's an interesting question. It's something I feel like it needs to be asked. So I'm going to ask it, but I'm not going to answer it. And then this is when Nick is like, I have that faith too. I believe we'll also be together. And Lacroix goes, oh my God, Nicholas, don't be foolish. And this is when he launches into his Peach monologue. Like, don't trade your treasure for an empty box. I have seen you love life. I have seen you look up at the stars. I have seen you love everything that life has to offer for you. Don't fucking give that up when you don't know where you're going. Don't you fucking do this to me. And Nick is listening and tearing up. He's like holding his steak and he's looking in the fire and his face is framed by the fire. And Lacroix, you can only pretty much see his face because he's wearing all dark clothing. So he's in this, like, the lighting in the scene is just phenomenal. And then he actually tears up. Lacroix actually tears up. And because he goes, oh my God, everybody is earning their fucking check. That's all I'm saying. Everyone is earning their check right now because he says, and so I suppose in your story, I'm the devil. Like, oh, look, Lacroix is the bad guy again.
And so, in your eyes, I'm the devil.
No. Not the devil, Lacroix.
What then?
You are my closest friend.
And he's actually tearing up because this is the thing that he has been afraid of for centuries. And it's finally here. And he doesn't know how to stop it. And Nick stands up and turns and faces him and says, no, you are not the devil, Lacroix. And Lacroix goes, what then? And Nick responds with, you are my closest friend. And Nigel looks like he's about to burst into tears. And fucking Christ, this is one of the best acted scenes in television, full stop. This moment right here, where Nick turns to him and he's like, no, man, nah, bro. You're my my closest friend. You are my brother. You are my father. You are everything to me. And I would never ask anybody else to do this for me, because he hands him the steak. And then he turns around and kneels over Natalie and takes her hand, and Lacroix raises the steak. And then we cut to the exterior and the sunrise, and damn you, Nicholas. And that's the end of the entire show of Forever Night. And you made it. You watched every single episode. And now you know why people are like, oh, isn't that the vampire show with the terrible series finale? Like, everybody knows it ends, quote, badly. I don't think it ends badly. I don't hate this ending. I don't hate this ending. I don't hate this ending at all. I love how murky and dark and weird and grimdark. And like, I love that moment and the push and pull between Lacroix and Nicholas.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Is it
The character dynamics are great.
This show has always been about the characters. It has always been about the characters.
It's all about the vibes, not the actual
The plot,
content.
The plot is generally ridiculous and silly, and sometimes it doesn't even make sense, but it's the characters that pull you through this show. The characters are what make this show. And the fact that we made the season finale, the series finale, character driven was a stroke of genius.
Yeah.
They aren't solving some crime. They aren't finally catching some huge serial killer and everybody. It's not even about.
Right. It's
there's
not about
even
the
a crime.
cop. It's about the vampire.
It's about Nick and the vampire and what that means. And I fucking love it. I just fucking love it. And I know this is a hard ending. I know it is, but I would have been disappointed if this show had ended happily. I think it would have undermined what they were saying the whole time. Nick doesn't have an out. He made a choice a long time ago, and he has to live with the consequences of his decisions. And he can try to be a better vampire, but he can never be a person. Not in the way he wants to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is, but he never stops trying. And
Right.
that's part of it too. And that's why this show is so phenomenal. And I had a brief discussion with somebody on Threads about it. And they were like, well, it sets all the tropes. Like, it does the sunrise, sunset. And I'm like, yeah, it does. That's great. But also, like, his quest for redemption is what we get and like, that gets echoed through the genre. That's what Angel is all about. That's what Moonlight is all about. But nobody does it like Forever Night does it.
Yeah.
Because they had that 90s sincerity, but they didn't feel like they needed to give us hope. They didn't feel like they needed to give us oh yeah, no, he got it. He's fine now. Look, it ended. He's got a white picket fence and he and Natalie have 16 kids and 3 dogs and 4 cats. And isn't that great?
Yeah. And I would say that's a really good narrative if you can pull it off, that if you can convey at the end that even though it ended badly, the entire struggle was a worthwhile effort.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there was a chance.
There was a chance. It got him the chance.
Which is what you need in a redemption arc.
Right.
Even if the character that is trying to redeem themselves dies, has a tragic ending, you need to feel that their whole struggle was the correct strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. This is my favorite. No. Sense8 has my favorite series finale because it gives you everything you want and a hopeful, like, amazing with an orgy. I mean, come on. But this is close. This is close. To me, this seals it. Like, this makes it one complete package. You know how sometimes when a show gets canceled, they end on a cliffhanger because it's like, well, we thought we were coming back.
Right.
They didn't. They ended it.
And this was the right way to go, to say,
we're finished.
There's very little chance that, like, Somebody may have had some hope, like
Oh,
in the
there was a
production team,
kickstart there was a Kickstart the Night campaign to bring
Oh.
it back.
to get season 4.
Yeah.
Okay, so there were lots of people that had convinced themselves that it was possible
Yeah.
to get a season 4. But the writers, the production team, decided it's better to go out and complete the story than it is to end on a cliffhanger and cross our fingers for a season 4.
Right. Yeah. I mean, this was common in the 90s where everybody kind of had to stay status quo. It couldn't be like the Vampire Diaries where by season 4, everyone is some random supernatural beastie and the whole setting has changed. And you couldn't really do that.
Right. It was like the TiVo DVR, the being able to record.
You were planning for syndication. I needed to be able to pop in season 2 and pop in season 1 and pop in season 3 and
but
feel like I'm watching
to be
the
able
same
to
show.
have like huge changes to the story, to the characters
Yeah.
over like less than a season.
Yeah.
Your viewers have to have an expectation that your audience is going to be able to watch every single episode, preferably in order. And that didn't happen until the like 2005, 2006
Yeah.
at
So
the earliest.
You weren't hoping that Natalie was going to come back as a vampire and we were all going to, like, LaCroix just stabs him in the stomach and then, like, picks him up
Well,
like a shish kebab
so
and walks him out the door.
You could imagine, let's see. It might be reasonable to say, okay, season 4, Natalie comes back as a vampire, which is a big shift to the whole dynamic. But between a season finale and a season premiere, you can have big changes.
Yeah.
But between episode 21 and 22, you can't.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm saying is there really
Until-
wasn't, they were giving you no hope. They were like, this is an ending.
Right.
But they gave you just that little bit of, but we didn't see LaCroix stake
Exactly.
Nick. And so we're going to leave you this. We're going to leave you the tiniest of breadcrumbs.
Right.
Or you can imagine that this is the final ending. This is it. LaCroix killed his daughter and his son in the same week. Because he kills Divya. And then he kills
Divya. Yeah.
Nick. And he doesn't have Jeanette anymore because now Jeanette is technically Nick's. And so Jeanette no longer has a master, I guess. No longer has a sire. I mean, yeah, there's not a whole lot more to say about this. It ended. Got some banging fucking... Nigel Bennett earned his money. He ate the scenery in this whole episode. And so does Gare at the end when he's staring into the fire and he's crying because it is finally too much. It is finally too far. And he can't do it again. And he's done. And he asks LaCroix to help him be done. And I'm less mad at this than I was about Vashon asking Tracy to stake him. Because this feels like you're my closest friend. You are the one that I always saw doing this. I've stabbed you before. Maybe you should do it now.
Your turn.
Your turn.
Tag.
I just, I don't know. I guess I'm the villain in your story. And then no, man, you're my closest friend. It didn't get better than that. I'm sorry. I've watched a lot of television since then, and I cannot think of another moment that was this, like, charged and emotional. And it's buried in there in this cheesy 90s vampire show. Maybe the season 4 finale of Babylon 5. But I'm not going to talk about what it's about because I'm going to start crying.
Or Goblin.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah. I will come as the rain because then I will be able to touch your face. Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. It's
Yeah.
fine. American Canadian television show. I just, it's so good. It's so good. And I haven't been able to watch it. Like I have had to, no matter how much I wanted to be like, okay, I don't quite remember what happens in the finale. I want to go check it out. I haven't been able to watch it because I kept this a secret from you for 2 years. And I feel like somebody needs to get me cupcakes because I didn't tell you that the entire main cast dies in the last 2 episodes of season 3, except Reese and LaCroix. And we don't know because we don't see Reese again.
Yeah.
We don't see Reese from the moment that we see him in the hospital. And he's like, there's life after this, Nick, I promise. And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Because Nick is done with the whole pretending to be a cop thing. All right. Do you have anything else to say?
Nope.
We're going to do the novels, but we don't have a timeline because the novels take longer than watching an episode. Clearly, we can't do one of those a week. So the best thing to do is subscribe. And then you'll get a notification when we update this. So you won't miss it when we do those. And we may yet still at least read season 4, the fan-made season 4, which you can find online. And talk about it. I don't think we're going to talk about it episode by episode. We may just do a whole retrospective of what happens because there's some interesting plot lines and it's all written in script form.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can find it. I think it's by Greer Watson. You can find it if you Google her and Forever Night Fan season 4. And we did finally finish the merch for the Vampire Dog 5K. So I'll be figuring out exactly how I want to offer those because I want to make them so I make enough to be able to donate to the MS Society of Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll put all those kinds of updates in the feed, but you got to subscribe in order to see it because it won't be every Monday anymore. So I guess until next time, friends.
You were my closest friend.
Aw, this is Come In 81 Kilo, signing off. Bye.
Bye.
Damn you, Nicholas.